Hey, welcome to the attic. Manadad here with my real life brother, Brobi1 Kenobi,
What is up?
frequent mythic drafter and longtime player, here to talk about Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. And we're going to talk about when you can play. We're going to cover what the money draft cards are, cards you probably shouldn't pass if you want money. The 10 archetypes that are official, and we'll also talk about some hidden archetypes that you can play in this set. Talk about aggro versus control. We'll go through the removal for each color and combat tricks for each color, top commons for each color, and let you know about some cards that I think are a trap that you should definitely not be drafting if you're trying to win. I have been studying this set ever since they released it. How much have you seen, Broby?
A little bit here and there in the last few days. Nothing substantial.
Yeah, so one thing I think you're going to be excited about this set is designed by Dave Humphreys, who also did War of the Spark and Kaldheim, and it's just some of the really excellent sets that have come out in recent years. And I was a big fan of Kaldheim personally. I think you enjoyed it, so I'm pumped to see what the latest is as we return to Kamigawa. You were playing a little bit during the Kamigawa era, right?
Gosh, it's been so long. A little bit. I crossed over just briefly. It was kind of like as I was stopping again.
Yeah. It was considered kind of a dud set, but the cards have worn up pretty well, and great flavor, of course, the Japanese thing. This new set is set, what is it, like 1,000 years in the future of Kamigawa, the plane of Kamigawa, so it's kind of a cyber ninja kind
Yeah,
of
there's a
theme.
lot to the story. That's
Anyways,
fascinating. I'm
people
excited.
probably know all that. We're just going to hit the draft stuff. When can you play? Releases February 10th on Arena and MTGO, which is tomorrow as we record this. It takes a long time to get these slides together, folks, so your likes and comments are always appreciated. And if you are watching on YouTube instead of on Twitch, you'll be able to jump to the chapters as we hit all these different chapters. Paper pre-release February 11th to 17th, and official worldwide release February 18th, according to Magic. So draft boosters, we're not going to talk about the other kind of boosters here. This is just their official contents of the booster. Like the last many sets, you're going to have one slot in the booster that will be double-faced. So you're either going to get the double-faced common or uncommon there, or the double or single-faced rare mythic. So if you get a single-faced rare mythic, you're going to get a double-faced common or uncommon in that slot. And then 3 uncommons and 9 commons. And this doesn't say, but I think there should be the foil replacing a basic land in the paper draft boosters, not on Arena, of course. They have these. The land is going to have these ukiyo-e. Don't ask me if I'm pronouncing that right. Type lands. You see the artwork there on the left. So some cool full art lands available in 33% of the packs. So I was just looking at what the pre-order prices are. If you see these cards, they're probably worth about 10 to 30 bucks. I mean, this Boseiju Who Endures, this channel land here, the green one, is definitely playable back in Eternal formats. It's an untapped green land. It is legendary, so you can't have 2 copies of it. But if you did draw 2 copies, you can use the channel ability, which just destroys an artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land. And they get to go search up a basic land. But anyways, it is a good card. We've also got the Phyrexians coming back on this plane. Jin Gataxius is here. We had Vorinclex in Kaldheim. And Tamiyo has gotten Phyrexian mana, which is just a one of in the set. There's no other Phyrexian mana. You were out of the game when Phyrexian mana came out, right?
Yeah, but I like caught back up with it later on.
Yeah, they
Like a
released a
couple of those
couple
cards
things
gave
on
me life.
Arena, like
Yeah,
Tezzeret's Gambit and stuff. It's you pay life instead of mana for the ones that have that little circle with the line through it symbol. And Tamiyo has hybrid Phyrexian mana, if it wasn't complicated enough. Another big planeswalker people are collecting is this Kaito Shizuki, is a ninja planeswalker. You got Tezzeret is here on the plane, messing with artifacts as he does. People really into this Saga Hidetsugu consumes all. I don't have the backside on this page. We'll see it later in the slides. But it flips into a thing that if it deals 10 damage, they lose the game. So it's kind of like a pseudo infect win condition. So it's kind of fun for Commander.
nice.
Kadama of the West Tree. I'm not really sure why that's. I mean, it's a good card, but I don't know. Maybe it's busted in some way. Or maybe just a lot of people are collecting all the Kadamas. It's the final Kadama that they printed. There are 3, I think, in the original Kamigawa, and there was 1 in Commander Legends, and now 1 in this set. Any of these channel lands are good. Otawara, the Soaring City, is the second best price-wise after Boseiju. And there's this cool equipment, Legendary Equipment, Eater of Virtue, which also has a pretty good price tag. As we record, these will all go down from pre-release prices, most likely, except for maybe Boseiju. So let's talk about the archetypes. Blue-black is ninjutsu. And if you can think back all the way back to Kamigawa, ninjutsu is an ability where you pay a certain amount and you can return an unblocked attacker to your hand to put in the ninjutsu card. So we got Kaito, which we mentioned. At rare, you've got Satoru Umezawa, which gives all your creatures ninjutsu, which is pretty cool. And you've got this Koto's the Silent Spider, which is a ninja, but it doesn't have ninjutsu, but it kind of has a thing where it can hit and take something of your opponents from their graveyard. But the signpost all the way on the right there is Silver Fur Master. It's a 2/2 with ninjutsu of a blue and a black. Ninjutsu abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate, and other ninja and rogue creatures you control get +1/+1. So, I mean, super clear what you're supposed to be doing in blue-black just from looking at that card.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Ninjutsuing in.
yeah. So let's look at the ninjas here. Prosperous Thief, Moon Circuit Hacker, Covert Technician, Moonsnare Specialist, Futurist Operative, Nezumi Prowler, Inkrise Infiltrator, Dokuchi Silencer. This is all just commons and uncommons here. Dokuchi Shadow Walker, and then remember that guy also buffs rogues. So you've got Cyber Trespassers, Network Disruptor, and Undercity Scrounger. So those are all your guys at common and uncommon that are getting buffed by this guy. Maybe I left off 1 rogue, but anyways, this is kind of your main set of guys. Prosperous Thief, top left here. 3/2, whenever 1 or more ninja or rogue creatures you control deal combat damage, create a treasure token. So that's going to be both an enabler as a ninja with ninjutsu and a payoff. So that's going to be a key one to collect in this archetype. You've also got Moon Circuit Hacker, which is a ninjutsu for 1, which is pretty useful. And it can draw a card the first time it hits. And subsequent times you have to loot, so you have to discard the card. Covert Technician lets you put artifacts onto the battlefield, although you'd have to pump it up to really get a lot out of it. But I do think it's going to be decent. It's uncommon, and it's a 2/4, and it looks like 4 toughness. We'll talk about that in the removal section. It's looking like 4 toughness is a pretty good number for a creature. So to get a 3-mana creature with 4 toughness could be pretty good. I like that Nezumi Prowler all the way on the right there. It's a 3/1. Ninjutsu's for 2, and when it enters, you can give a creature Death Touch and Lifelink. So this is a case where you might actually ninjutsu this at a different part of, before damage is dealt. Actually, that's not the one I'm thinking of. But the thing with ninjutsu is you can ninjutsu after damage is dealt. There is an end of combat step. So once blockers are declared, you can ninjutsu before the damage, or you can ninjutsu after the damage. And of course, the cards that you pick up, you want them to have ETB abilities. So if you look at Network Disruptor down there on the right, it's a 1/1 flyer, so it's evasive. It's going to get in and be unblocked a lot of the time. And then its ETB ability, when you replay it, it's going to tap target permanent, could tap a blocker, so help you get in, get more ninjas. Pretty awesome.
Yeah. Look what you want to do.
Yeah. And I mean, even this at common, the Dokuchi Shadow Walker, being able to get a 5/5 down for 4, and if you've got your Signpost uncommon for 3, I mean, that is a big hit, right? You pick up your 1/1 and you hit for 5, and then you got a 5/5 down there, which is probably going to be smashing in for a turn or two more, at least. So ninjas are rocking it. In terms of other stuff in this archetype, it's looking like they've got the discard spell that pays you off a little bit if you have ninjas or rogues. So that's the kind of standard mind rot spell, but I think it's a little extra good if you got ninjas or rogues. And you're going to have ninjas in black, so you can probably play it in anything. But
on that ninjutsu mechanic, like, say you were attacking with a 1/1 flyer and you doing that combo, and say they weren't able to block the flyer, and so they didn't have any flyer blockers, and they went to declare blockers, and then you can ninjutsu in, and they still can't block it.
Yeah,
per se?
yeah. After they've declared blockers,
Even though it comes down as a 5/5, just ground creature.
Yeah.
There's a declared blocker step, even if they didn't have any flyers to block. Like, you have an opportunity to get that guy in.
Yeah, we'll see how Arena handles it. I'm guessing they'll if you have ninjutsu, I'm guessing they'll make you go through every step of the combat to give you those opportunities to ninjutsu. But you might have to go into full control maybe for the end of combat step.
You think so?
Possibly.
That's good. Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see how well it's programmed. You know, there've been lots of bugs in these new sets when they first come out. You got Kami of the Restless Shadows, the 3/3. You can return a ninja or rogue from your graveyard to your hand. I kind of think this is the only deck you'd even consider playing it in, because otherwise you're putting a creature on top of your library when you bring it in. It does have an ETB ability, right? So if you're getting in and bouncing it back and replaying it, which is a lot to ask for 5 mana, but if you are, then you got the ETB ability. Similar with Virus Beetle, right? You can bounce that back and make people discard over and over again. You can set up a little engine with a cheap ninja with that. You got this thing Suit Up, right? So people are going to want to block because they're going to be afraid that you're going to ninjutsu. So you can get them with combat tricks like Suit Up, where you go make something a 4/5 and then draw a card. You got Acquisition Octopus, which is a good equipment for a deck with a lot of evasive creatures, because when it deals combat damage, you get to draw a card. Oh, you know about these reconfigure equipments, right? We should just
you can
briefly mention they're creatures that can become equipment. That's what reconfigure means. We got Secluded Courtyard, which will let you cast, you choose a creature type, and you can cast creature spells of any color. There are a handful of green ninjas, and I think maybe 1 white ninja. So if you wanted to try and like splash some of those, you do have a little bit of support with the Secluded Courtyard. You got the Searchlight Companion, which is an artifact that's going to create a 1/1 and a 1/1 flyer, which is, of course, an ETB, right? So bounce it back to your hand, replay it, get another 1/1 spirit, rinse and repeat. And then it might seem crazy to have the shrine on here, but the shrines in this set are creatures, similar to the equipment. And it is an 0/4 flyer. So ninjutsu works as long as the creature is unblocked. It doesn't matter if the creature would deal damage. So in like the classic ninjutsu decks in the Eternal formats, you'd use something like Ornithopter, 0-2 flying, fly in. And Goshintai of Lost Wisdom's 2 mana, 0-4, they're not going to block it some of the time because they can't because it's flying, and some of the time they're not going to block it because they go, okay, well, it's not going to deal any damage. Why are you attacking me? But you bounce it back, and you get your ninjutsu. All right, another cool archetype here in this set. Blue-white is vehicles. Signpost here is Prodigy's Prototype. It's a 3/4 vehicle. And whenever one or more vehicles you control attack, you create a 1/1 pilot creature token with this creature cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So that is a token in the set. Go ahead.
That's good.
Yeah, and vehicles have not really been that good in the recent sets.
They haven't been that strong. That card is not super weak if there's a vehicle built around.
I haven't really played any set that had heavy vehicles because I didn't play very much of Kaladesh. But the word in draft on vehicles is that crew 1 and 2 are good, and once you start to get like crew 3, crew 4, it's harder to crew. But, you know, if there's a lot of these 1/1 pilots that can crew at 3, and you'll see some other creatures that have abilities like that, then maybe you can do it. And then you also got a land like here, like Mech Hanger, which is 3 and tap, target vehicle becomes an artifact creature, so you don't even need to.
Whoa. So two greater cruise 3 and 4 vehicles, right?
It's a 1/1 cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater, so it crews as if it's a 3. Right, but see, okay, so whenever one or more vehicles you control attack, right? So you're gonna be pooping out these pilots over and over, so you're going to have a bunch of these guys, and you can crew more vehicles, and you can poop more pilots. So yeah, pretty clear. Just cast vehicles. It's that thing of like you need the chocolate and the peanut butter with vehicles, right? You need the vehicles and you need the creatures that can crew them, and you don't want to get a hand of just one or just the other.
Right, but once you get it going, it looks like that engine can start crewing.
But there are some things to mitigate that. Well, first of all, uncommon Hotshot Mechanic. This is going to be a top uncommon because A, it's just a 2/1 for 1 white mana. And it can crew vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. So you can get some pretty busted openings with the Hotshot Mechanic. You get in, you smash for 2 for a turn or 2, and then by that time you've cast a big vehicle and you're crewing it up and you're smashing with that. Kitsune Ace can give vehicles first strike and then also untap itself, or I should say untap itself, so that you can use it for defense, to crew a vehicle for defense. Born to Drive is an enchantment that has channel that makes one of these pilot creatures. I think you're going to use probably the channel ability more than you're going to cast it as a enchantment.
Yeah, then that doesn't make it all that good.
But, you know, it's got the optional thing. Light the Way lets you, you know, do a combat trick with a vehicle. I think the more often you're going to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature and untap it, and when they thought you couldn't crew the vehicle on defense, and you can, and you power it up, and you are able to kill them. And then it's got the fail mode of just returning a permanent you control to its hand, so you can beat a removal spell or something for 1 white mana. So that's actually a pretty good trick, I think, in a lot of decks, but has a little extra juice here in the vehicle deck. Suit Up is going to turn on your vehicles. And it does have draw a card. I have to think Suit Up is actually going to be decent. Usually this effect in blue, like the Serpent, what was the one? Like make a 4/4 for a turn. Anyways, it's usually not good in draft, but
it's like it was
make a 4/5 and draw a card, and it has extra juice with all the vehicles running around. I put Guardians of Oboro in this archetype because it's a 3/4 and it's defender. So you're not going to attack with it, but it has good, crew power when you're ready to attack. Moonfolk Puzzle Maker gives you a scry when you tap it. It does only crew at 1, but you should look for creatures that pay you off when you tap them, because you get some taps right away with the vehicles. Sky Swimmer Koi, whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you can draw a card. If you do, discard a card. I just thought that was another one. You're going to be casting a lot of artifacts in this archetype. Now, there are other archetypes coming up that are all artifact based, but as you can probably tell already, this set has a huge amount of artifacts and enchantments. Like a huge percentage of the creatures are artifacts or enchantments, in addition to like vehicles and all these other things, the sagas and the enchantment side. Moonsnare Prototype is going to let you tap your vehicles for mana if you can't crew them. And then it has the failed case of the channel and putting the non-land permanent on top or bottom of library. Disruption Protocol, similarly, you can tap your vehicle that you're not able to crew and get a cheaper counterspell. And then Anchor to Reality, I don't really think you should play, but it lets you search your library for an equipment or vehicle and put it onto the battlefield if you sacrifice an artifact or creature. And you can get a little bonus if the mana value is less. But 4 mana is a lot to play. 4 mana plus a sacrifice is a lot to pay for a tutor. So let's look. These are all the vehicles you can play in blue, white, at common and uncommon and rare here. Mobilizer Mech, 3/4 flying, crew 3. And whenever it becomes crewed, up to one other target vehicle you control becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. So that's going to be a key one to power up a whole army of vehicles. Imperial Recovery Unit lets you bring back a creature or vehicle card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Thundersteel Colossus. This is like the Timmy vehicle here. It's a 7/7 trample haste with crew 2, but it costs 7 to put out. I think probably not going to be good, but we'll see.
Yeah.
High Speed Hover Bike is a 2/2 flash flying, and when it enters, you tap up to one target creature, and it only takes 1 to crew it. So that looks like it's going to be pretty good. I like the ability to flash it in and tap stuff also. So even if you can't crew it, you still get a little bit of value out of it. We got Brute Suit, which is also another crew 1. It's a 4/3 vigilance. We got Futurist Sentinel, which is a 6/6 crew 3. And it ties you to blue. Not super high on that one. Dragonfly Suit is a 3/2 flying crew 1. I think that's a good one. The rares here are all great. You got a 5/5 Menace. When it enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to twice the number of vehicles you control to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So, fail case, it's 4 mana, deal 2, right? Because it's going to count itself.
Nice.
And in this deck, it could be 4 mana, remove something huge. Plus, you got a nice vehicle left on the battlefield. Mech Titan Core is a hilarious card. It's kind of like a Power Rangers thing where you like assemble all the pieces of the Zord. You exile it and 4 other artifact creatures and or vehicles and create a 10/10 construct artifact creature token with flying, vigilance, trample, lifelink, and haste. That's all colors. And when that token leaves the battlefield, you return all the cards that were exiled, which is good because it would really stink if you made that and then they exile it and all your stuff stayed exiled. I think it's not Magical Christmas Land. You could probably do it, especially in the vehicles deck.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just all you need is 4 others. Yeah,
you got 5. You got 5 of these type of permanents on the battlefield, which you're going to be trying to do. So it's probably late game, but it's a 2/4 crew 2 vehicle, so it's going to get all your vehicle synergies while you wait for that.
Super late game.
And then, yeah, if you get long enough in the game and enough stuff on the battlefield, then you're gonna
Could even be a turn 5 deal in the right.
you're gonna close it out,
type.
right? I mean, it's got haste too, so that thing is smashing in a 10/10 with lifelink and haste, and flying and vigilance and trample.
And trample and
my
giving it first strike and death touch.
yeah, Mindlink Mech becomes, well, you can give it first strike with the other guy that gives all your vehicles first strike.
Oh, the vehicle's good.
When Mindlink Mech becomes crewed for the first time each turn, until the end of turn, it becomes a copy of target non-legendary creature that crewed it, except it's a 4/3, and it's a vehicle artifact in addition to its other types. And again, crew 1. I mean, like that's pretty good.
Right away, that hits pretty fast. 3 mana.
And it has flying still, so
yeah. So if like something crewed it that has lifelink, it would get.
It'd be a 4/3 flying lifelink, yeah.
Yeah.
Reckoner Bankbuster, and also like it's a ninja. It becomes a ninja. All the things that count other types, right? Reckoner Bankbuster enters the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. 2 tap, remove a charge counter. So this is like a Maze Mind Tome on a vehicle, basically. So you remove counters to draw a card, and then once you run out of counters, you're going to make a pilot creature that crews the vehicle. You got a little getaway driver. It is a crew 3, so maybe in this deck you're going to be able to crew it on the reg, but in other decks you can still play it, I think, because it's basically Maze Mind Tome. Red White Samurai, I put this one right up at the top for you because this looks to be the aggro deck of the format. And I know you love to smash. They have a ton of rares in this color pair. So I don't know if that means
dialing down this color pairing over the last few sets. Red White just seems to be getting weak.
Well, they try to make, you can see they're trying to push the legendaries in it because it's like red white is one of the least popular dual color pairs in Commander. But that might have the effect, right? If people are drafting these rares, they might push them into this deck a little more often because there are more rares in these colors. But Daiganjo Uprising is looking like maybe it's going to be one of the rares that gets passed a lot. So anyways, your signpost here is the Asari Captain. It's a 4/3 haste, and whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each samurai or warrior you control. So there's a really strong attack alone theme in these colors. So you're going to try to like build up one big creature that attacks and then get your opponent low enough, and then you can attack with all the little creatures. And that guy basically tells you that's what you're going to do.
Yeah, you need like some evasive flyers here.
Yeah, for sure. For in terms of like smashing in with one single guy. Selfless Samurai is going to give a bonus when a samurai or warrior attacks alone. It's going to get lifelink, and it can also sacrifice itself to give us something indestructible. So that's going to be a huge enabler in this archetype, and pretty decent in other ones. So you're going to fight over that one because just the ability for a 2/2 to sacrifice itself to give something indestructible is going to be pretty good. Aki Ronin, whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Meh. Kill the Samurai, whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, the next spell you cast this turn costs 1 less to cast. And then here's one of my favorites in this archetype here. I think you're going to be drafting this guy a lot. Eiganjo Exemplar. It's a 2/1 enchantment creature. And whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So you can imagine this is at common. You get a couple of these guys out on the battlefield. And all of a sudden, anything you attack with, it's almost like an equipment, right? It's like anything you attack with is getting +3/+3, including one of these guys. And already on its own, right? If it just attacks alone as itself, it attacks as a 3/2 rather than a 2/1. So I like that guy a lot. we'll talk about it more in the removal section, but there is a thing of this trade-off of like artifact and enchantment removal is going to be pretty good in this set. And so the more expensive your artifact or enchantment, the more you're going to lose tempo. But I do like these like 2 mana artifact or enchantment guys. We've got Sisters Yamazaki instead of the Brothers Yamazaki here in this set. A 3/3 trample. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you can cast an artifact from your graveyard. And then sort of the mirror here. It's a 3/2 vigilance. Whenever a samurai or warrior you control attacks alone, you can cast an enchantment card from your graveyard. And she's 1 mana cheaper, so go figure. I guess they feel like it was more busted to cast artifacts. Tempered in Solitude. I don't know how good this card's going to be. It's impulse draw whenever you got a creature that attacks alone. So if you land that early over the course of the game, I think you're going to be getting a lot of card advantage. On the other hand, like, are you taking turn 2 off to play it?
Right.
Right? It's not a creature that attacks alone. It's just the payoff, not like the Selfless Samurai or the Exemplar are both a payoff and an enabler. I mean, it seems aggressively costed. 2 mana.
Yeah, I don't know if it pays off. I mean, it just...
You can suicide in a guy just to draw a card.
This is true.
We got experimental.
You gotta have, yeah. I mean, we'll find out. It's uncommon, so it should play. I would imagine it has to be decent at least for the deck.
Well, compared to this common, right? For 1 red, you're gonna get the effect 1 time here, which is it comes in. You exile the top card of your library. You can play that card. And then you cash that in later, 3 mana, make a samurai with vigilance.
Yeah.
So, like, if you've got that at common, do you need Tempered in Solitude? It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Here's your 1/1 flyer. That's a warrior that you're talking about. Cheap flyer, cheap evasive.
Tap sound at the end. That's nice.
And it's got the ability to tap a creature, right, when it gets to the late game, and it's less useful. We got the old Sunblade Samurai, which is a samurai. It's a 4/4 vigilance. It's a little overcosted, but you can channel it and just grab a plains with it. So I kind of feel like this is one of those 5-drops where you're happy to run a couple. Because either you draw it when you've got the 5 mana, or you're just going to cash it in for plains, and then you'll draw the next one when you've got 5 mana. But, you know, not for your more aggro builds of this. The Ancestral Katana is an equipment that can attach for 1 if you're attacking alone with a samurai or warrior. And then I'm curious to get your analysis on this card here at the end, Imperial Oath. It's a 6 mana sorcery. You create 3 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. Scry 3.
Yeah, that's a good card. For common.
You think it's good?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sorcery and it can be bought back in different decks. It creates 6/6 spread across 3 creatures.
It's really good if you got the signpost guy. Right?
Scry 3 is like better than drawing a card.
Yeah, well, Scry 3 is pretty darn good at that point in the game.
Right.
I just don't know if 3 2/2s are going to add up in a thing that wants you to attack alone. But maybe that's just like you've been attacking alone, and then you bust out a bunch of these guys, and then you do a swarm attack to finish it off.
This deck is trying to go wide or get something over the top. I still feel like the deck is probably going to swing wide at some point, right?
Yeah, well, I think when you're ready to finish, you swing wide with all your creatures.
Eventually, the attacking lone creature, like you're getting some abilities, and maybe you're losing a creature here and there, but like it's likely not killing them. They're likely blocking it or somehow bouncing it, or like the attacking alone is weak because what happens when that creature gets bounced or.
Right. Instant speed removal really shuts this
it down.
strategy down.
But you might get abilities as they're if you allow them to go to attackers and do everything. But
I mean, that's one of the reasons I like the Selfless Samurai, because you can give the indestructible.
true.
Okay, another big archetype. This one is so well supported. You're gonna see red green modified. Modified means a creature has equipment, an aura you control, or a counter, like a +1/+1 counter on it, and then it is considered modified. And so the signpost here is this kind of like Rhythm of the Wild type enchantment. One red and a green. Comes in with 4 +1/+1 counters, and you can move one per turn on your turn. So it's kind of trying to encourage you to modify 4 different creatures slowly.
Pretty good for.
And it's going to give modified creatures haste. So it's like a riot plus it's like a riot where you get to choose both modes. It's pretty good, but it's an enchantment, you know. I just wish like
It's not a creature.
it's
but,
not a
like,
creature,
it,
you know.
It can come down and plus a creature, then it can haste in your 4-drop next turn.
You're
Like,
gonna see
it
there's
pays
this.
you off for taking that turn off.
Yeah,
It doesn't suck on turn 3. If say you take turn 3 off and you're able to haste in your 4-drop and you're able to plus your 2-drop,
yeah.
it's good.
Well, you can't. Well, if unless your 4-drop comes in modified, because you got to modify
No,
it
if
to
you
give it.
cast your 4-drop, you put a counter on it. It gets haste.
Right.
A counter modifies it, so your 4-drop has haste.
So you modified the 2-drop when you played the Hot Spring, you mean?
Right. So
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You're
Now I'm
not
following you.
necessarily losing by taking the turn off because your 2-drop became +1/+1, and then your 4-drop now doesn't take a turn off.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, when you play it on curve, it's gonna work. I think. I just it just seems to me you'll see this archetype is so well supported that you probably don't need it. And the other thing about the way this set is designed is like you're gonna run packages of all these things in off-color decks because there's so much cross synergy across the different colors and things. So you're gonna be running modified packages in non-red green decks just because of you got the synergies. You know, the cards just line up that way.
Yeah.
Okay, Windows. I do not want to restart. Thank you very much. Red green modified. Aki Ember Keeper. Whenever a non-token modified creature you control dies, you create a 1/1 spirit token. 2/1 for 2. Ambitious Assault. You can buff your whole team +2/+0, and if you control a modified creature, draw a card, which is going to be pretty easy to control a modified creature here. Flame Discharge. I mean, you can play this in any deck, but you get a little bonus if you've got a modified creature as you cast the spell. You'll see that in a lot of these things. You got the Ramper here that gives you double green if it's modified. You got the Guidebot, which comes down and puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature, and then has the ability to draw cards that cost less for each modified creature you control. That's a tricky one to evaluate. I don't think it's probably the best limited card, but I have to play with it. You got this Artifact Removal, which is at sorcery speed, but it's going to drop a +1/+1 counter on a creature. I think people are going to be main decking this. That's my hot take right now. Because there are so many artifacts. And
You get 2 +1/+1
especially if
counters.
you're in a modified synergy deck. You know,
It destroys an artifact.
it destroys an artifact.
Yeah.
Like maybe this
Yeah,
walking
that's artifacts.
skyscraper down there is an 8-mana artifact. Upriser Renegade is going to get buff for each other modified creature you control. It does say other. Unfortunately, it doesn't get its own buff. But I think it's regularly going to be a 3/3 for 2, which is, you know, pretty decent. Walking Skyscraper, this looks like the, what was it called? The Gatebreaker Colossus? Gateway Colossus? From the Ravnica sets. It's going to cost 1 less for each modified creature you control. Probably, I don't know. Maybe actually about the same as getting Gates in limited in that format. I don't know. But I think you're regularly going to be casting it for 5 mana. Even 6 mana, right? You get a 8/8 trample that's hexproof as long as it's untapped.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would imagine you get it for 6 a lot, and certainly, yeah.
yeah, 5, 6, even 4 sometimes. If you really
A late game, you're
curve
gonna get
out,
it for like 3 or 4, 2.
yeah.
Some rare situations.
You got this ninja. When it deals combat damage, it puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature that doesn't have one. So it's basically like forcing you to go wide with your modifying. You got this terrarium, which grabs a basic land, and then you can sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter down later. So you got the mana sitting around. Dramatist Puppet, which is kind of like a single instance of proliferate. And most of the modifying, I should say, is in the form of +1/+1 counters. I mean, the majority of cards are going to want you to do the +1 counter thing. However, I did grab all the auras in the set. So you have these 2 land auras, which kind of harken back to the Genju cards from the old Kamigawa that turn lands into creatures. But of course, because they've got an aura on them, they are modified creatures.
Well, that's an interesting. So if it be destroyed, sacrifice it, and then Ian's indestructible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, the problem is Harmonious
So you keep your
Emergence,
land
right?
in
You
the
can't
end.
play that until turn 5, otherwise the land is tapped. You could play it on
but
4.
You kind of haste. You haste in that land.
But you
on
want to
turn
play it
5.
on 5 because it'll be haste and you can attack with it. But
So
you know,
that's
it is
4.
a 4/5, modified from the get go, and similarly with Crackling Emergence, right? It's a 2 mana
And then
modified
lands.
creature, adding to your modified creature count.
You don't lose your land.
And you're not going to lose your land unless they exile it. Gift of Wrath. They're trying to design these auras, right, so that it's not as much of the blowout. But you do have to stick the aura, right? So you're not going to cast this till people are. You're probably not going to play Gift of Wrath. It's 4 mana. Let's be real. But gives a creature +2/+2 and menace, which is a pretty real buff. And it's going to be modified. So you're going to get all your modified buffs. And then, should that creature die after it has been enchanted, you're going to get left with a 2/2 spirit with menace.
Yeah.
You're not quite 2 for 1.
Yeah, I like they're kind of like they stop you from running on the land.
I think if you're going to run a 4 mana enchantment in this deck, though, you run this Favor of Jukai, which has the fail case of being just 2 mana, give something +3/+3 and reach until end of turn.
Yeah.
So
+3/+3 is strong.
Yeah, and reach too, right? You're going to be able to eat those flyers that are trying to get in and ninjutsu you.
Yeah.
Eki Warpaint is your cheap aura that does have the downside of getting 2 for 1, but it's pretty good aggro.
Yeah. Yeah, you can get out fast with that.
Yeah. If you're kind of willing to go all in on it, and make your opponent have it. Historian's Wisdom, I don't like this card at all, but it is another +2/+1, and if you do have the greatest power, creature with greatest power, you get to draw a card, so it will replace itself. If you're pretty confident you've got the big green creatures, I guess you could run it. But you're going to get blown out by instant speed removal if some of the time.
Yeah.
This
You
Jukai
always want to put that on your biggest creature too, right?
Yeah, that's true, right? Sometimes you want to put your buff on not the biggest creature.
Diversify. You're not trying to build
That's a good
up
point.
the biggest creature necessarily.
Yeah. Jukai Preserver is another one that's got the flexibility with the channel. So you can modify 2 creatures for 3 mana, or if you can wait till turn 4, it can come down and put a plus on a creature, including itself. So it can just come down as a 4 mana 4/4 modified. Iron Apprentice is just a 1 mana +1/+1, and then when it dies, you get to move that counter. In fact, any counters that have wound up on it to a creature you control. So it's kind of got the what's that mechanic? Modular. It's not quite modular, but it's similar. Heir of the Ancient Fang enters the battlefield with a +1 counter on it if you control a modified creature. So not super high on that, but I do think it's going to be really easy to have a modified creature. So maybe it's almost always a 3 mana,
and it makes
3/4.
Modified.
Yeah. Generous Visitor, it's going to be really easy to cast enchantments, and then so that's a 1/1 that's going to be modified pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You got a ramp spell here that drops a +1 counter. I mean, there's +1 counters everywhere, right? This is the most slides of any archetype. I did because it's just super supported. And then the other way to modify is equipment. This is all the equipment in these colors.
Lizard blades.
Yeah, and then a lot of the equipment is also creatures, right? So, I guess you could equip your equipment if you need a modified creature. Yeah, I mean the rare equipment is pretty fun. The Ogrehead Helm could definitely put you in this archetype where
I can't wait till I play against a screen name that's Lizard Blades.
Lizard Blades you can play in anything, right? It's just a 1/1 double strike that can equip and give something double strike. This equipment, Simian Sling, I'm guessing you're going to be drafting a lot of. This is your 1 mana red common equipment / it's a 1/1 creature. And like the Tormentor's Helm from Kaldheim, right? It deals a damage to defending player if it becomes blocked.
Yeah.
Or the creature it is equipping becomes blocked. So
okay.
Great card. Green-white. This is the nexus of the enchantment archetypes. You can tell that from the signpost here. It's a 2/2 lifelinker and makes enchantments cost 1 less to cast. So you're just going to try to get out a lot of enchantments. The rare that might put people into this one is this rare that kind of wants you to do stuff with sagas, which all turn into enchantment creatures. Every single saga in this set turns into a creature as its last chapter.
Interesting.
So tons of enchantment creatures, and which of course are going to get cost less if they're an enchantment creature. So like your Skyblast Samurai is going to cost less for each enchantment you control. This Naturalist is itself an enchantment, plus it's going to make enchantment spells cost 1 less to cast. So if you can get down in Magical Christmas Land, 2 of these, you're going to be dropping these 4/4 flyers for super cheap. You got stuff like Runaway Trashbot, which is going to pay you off even if your enchantments die. Spirited Companion is an enchantment creature that's a 1/1 that draws you a card for just 2 mana. Looking like definitely one of the top commons, at least until we play with it and see how much just a 1/1 enchantment creature is valuable. You got Touch the Spirit Realm, which can come in as removal enchantment, or you can channel it to do a little blink effect. Here's that Exemplar again, 2/1 enchantment creature. There's also a lifelinker, a 2/3 lifelinker at common here for 3 mana. And then at the bottom here, I've got the 3 common and uncommon sagas. Main one to focus on for this archetype, I think, is Michiko's Reign of Truth. So 2 mana, you're going to start buffing a creature for each artifact and enchantment you control. And then when it flips, it becomes a thing that gets its power and toughness from a number of artifacts and enchantments. And Befriending the Moss flips into a 2/4 flyer. Here's one to get your Mythic Drafter opinion on. So Befriending the Moss, the thing with all these sagas is they're very slow.
Yeah.
The creatures seem to be costed as if they cost what the upfront cost of the saga is. Now it is like a planeswalker. It's going to sit out there and give you some value before it flips.
Like that is almost better in the red-white deck because you're trying to get like that creature up in the air on the attack alone.
Yeah. But it's just an
And
insect. It's not a warrior or a samurai. So it's not. Some of the things buff only warriors and samurais that attack alone.
well, I guess because of the first two chapters play out, and it comes down late at 4 mana. Like it's not like that good. It should be like 3 mana or something.
Yeah. I mean, but giving something +1/+1 and flying is good, but it's 4 mana. And then you're left with a 2/4 flyer, which is decent, but by that time it's turn 6 at the earliest, turn 7 at the earliest. And how good is a 2/4 flyer on turn 7? I mean, you didn't have to pay for it. This one's a little better because a 2/2 first striker can still have a lot of value through the mid game. And then on the green side of this enchantment, you got stuff like Blossom Prancer here, which is just a 4/4 reach for 3 that's going to let you try and find an enchantment or creature card within the top 5 cards of your library. And you can fail to find and just gain 4 life if you're really desperate at that part of the game. We got our 1/1 Death Toucher. Green common is an enchantment creature. Which is good. Could just sit out there, prevent your opponent from attacking, and give you the buffs for having lots of enchantments. Geothermal Kami lets you either buy back one of these sagas or buy back any enchantment that's got a good ETB, maybe your Blossom Prancer. Commune with Spirits, one of the cantrip things. You can also find enchantments in addition to lands.
Kami is not bad to gain 3 life with that as well and bring back an enchantment.
Yeah. The 4/3 for 4.
Usually you see like that, like on a blue creature at that like a 3/3 stats without the life gain.
Yeah.
So, like bring back a sorcery or something.
Yeah.
Or the so overall it seems like that's all everything plays in for common.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, you can't run too many of them, right? Because it's a 4 mana thing, and it only gets benefit as
I think
the game goes later.
Oh, I think this deck wants to buy back sagas, right? Or the sagas are exiled.
Well, you can bounce the creature, right? If you get that 2/4 flyer and it's useless, you just bounce it back to your hand and get the saga value. And make your 4/3 into a 5/4 flying and mash in with that.
That's true. Yeah.
You got Bearer of Memory here as an enchantment creature, plus it's a mana sink in the late game. And it does +1/+1 counter, so it's going to help you with the modified. And it gives trample. Careful Cultivation is an aura, an enchantment. But tons of stuff that does ramp in green in this set. So you got Boseiju Reaches Skyward, which is going to grab you 2 forests. You got this Greater Tanuki, which is a fantastic common. It's a 6 mana 6/5 trample. But similar to that other one where you drop it and get a plains, you can channel this, get a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped. So it's going to actually ramp you. So you can ramp with the Tanuki, right, and drop another Tanuki on turn 5.
It's better than a lot of the 6/5 tramples you've seen. That's a good 6 drop.
Plus there's things, that'll get its stuff out of the graveyard, right? So you channel it into your graveyard and come back.
Right. Bring it back.
And Roaring Earth, which is another channel that puts +1/+1 counters. And pays you off a bit for ramping. Jukai we talked about, Visitor we talked about, Grafted Growth we talked about, just tons of enchantments. And if you're curious what the shrines are in these 2 colors, right? So if you're targeting shrines, you get a 1/1 for 2, 1/1 trample for 2 that you can pay 1 at your end step and put a +1/+1 counter on target shrine for each shrine you control. So if you can get both of these cooking, this one's a little not so great, but maybe in this format, in this archetype, if you can get it for 3 mana instead of 4 with your Signpost Uncommon, you get a 1/3 Vigilance, And you can pay 1, you can make a bunch of spirits. So you can really gum up the ground with the spirits on that. And on the other side of the coin, and so enchantments represent the old ways of Kamigawa, and artifacts represent technology and the new ways of Kamigawa. And so those are centered in blue and red. And it's pretty similar to the other signpost. This one's a 2/2 flyer artifact creature that reduces artifacts by 1.
So artifacts are new, enchantments are old.
I guess that's the flavor, anyways.
I guess.
Right. We don't think of the word artifact denoting new, but you got stuff like Reality Heist that's going to cost less for each artifact. It's just like a draw spell. You got an artifact that ramps you to cast more artifacts. You got this smelter. Whenever you attack, you can sacrifice an artifact to make a 3/1 red construct token with haste. You've got a patchwork automaton. My mouth is getting a little smacky. I'm going to drink some water. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Modified. Armguard Familiar. 2/1 ward. 2 artifact equipment creature. We got the octopus as equipment creature. The trash bot. Disruption protocol we talked about. You can get a little bonus for having an artifact that you can tap. Same with network terminal. Experimental synthesizer is going to be really interesting in this deck because it's just a 1 mana artifact that's going to impulse draw you. This twin shot sniper is a fantastic uncommon. You're probably not going to see too many of these passed. This is a 2/3 reach for 4, and when it enters, it deals 2 damage to any target. So it's probably immediately going to kill something. Because there's plenty of stuff that's 1 and 2 toughness. Or, fail case, it's a 2 mana shock. So it can go face even. Anchor to Reality we talked about, not super useful. Ironhoof Boar, Moonsnare Prototype. I think we talked about a lot of these already. Kami of Industry. When it enters the battlefield, you can return target artifact with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next step. So the question is, like, for 5 mana, it is a 3/6, which is, I guess, decent, but not aggressive in terms of power. But you've got stuff like this Dragon Spark Reactor, which gets counters every time you have an artifact enter the battlefield, and you've got Tawashi Song Shaper, which is going to get buffed until end of turn whenever an artifact enters the battlefield. So and then you've got like stuff like Reinforced Ronin, which bounces back to your hand, so it's going to get you more of these artifact ETBs. So there is some kind of like artifact enter the battlefield synergy thing you can build. Whether it's...
What if you brought back Reinforced Ronin? Do you sacrifice it or does it return to your hand?
If you sacrifice it, it's not going to return to your hand.
Well, at the beginning of the next end step, it does both things, right? It does sacrifice at the beginning of the next end step and then return it.
Oh, I think, yeah, you could probably stack it so that it comes back to your hand. So that is a little combo.
That's would be the combo, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Good spot on that.
Then you discard it and you can draw a card, or you can bid it out.
I think the main combo with it is the Circuit Mender, right? So this insect here on the left, when it enters the battlefield, you're going to gain 2 life, and then when it leaves the battlefield, you draw a card, right? So you let this die at some point in the game, draw a card off of it, and then you Kami it back. You're going to gain 2 life and draw another card.
What about the reconfigure stuff? Can you bring it in and then reconfigure it to a creature and then it wouldn't sacrifice?
That's interesting. I think it would still
Because it didn't know
sacrifice
what
because it still knows it's the same card.
creature.
But you could do a blink effect, right? So that it thinks it's a different.
Well, refigure well attack. This isn't a
You
well,
could
attached. It
you could
isn't a
blink or
creature.
bounce it, but like how much mana do you have after you spent 5 mana on this
Well,
Kami of Industry?
yeah, you would have you would have much better.
You don't have a ton of mana, probably. But like here, like Mnemonic Sphere, right? You sacrifice it to draw 2 cards, you can bring it back. And then if you've got the 2 mana, you can sacrifice it. Again, draw 2 more cards.
Yeah, I guess it's true.
The other
You
one
still
would
have to
be
have a lot of
the
mana.
that 1 mana thing that impulse draws you 1, right?
Oh yeah, that artifact, yeah.
But what are you going to impulse draw that you can cast? I don't know.
Artifacts and enchantments.
Right. So at the nexus of enchantments and artifacts, you've got black white, and their whole thing is quote unquote a balance. So their payoff is for having artifacts or enchantments. Basically, because black just wants to use whatever it can to win. Doesn't matter. And then I guess white for balance. But anyways, the signpost here is Naomi, Pillar of Order. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, if you control an artifact and an enchantment, you create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. So this one is another like chocolate and peanut butter situation, but I think this is even worse than the vehicles because it doesn't seem to be as well, like the payoffs are not great to my eye, but we'll see what you think. The common here, you've got Kami of Terrible Secrets, which is a 3/4. If you've got an artifact and an enchantment, of which it is neither, you're going to get to draw a card and gain a life. You got Roadside Reliquary, which is a land you have to sacrifice to draw a card if you control an enchantment, and draw a card if you control an artifact. So, I mean, I guess the fail case is you're probably going to control one or the other. So it's just a land you can trade in for a card in the late game. But it is a colorless land, which is a pretty big cost in limited. We've got the sorcery speed removal spell that if you happen to have an artifact or enchantment, you're going to get a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. I mean, this is the deck where it's best for sure. If you're going to run it in any deck, this will be the one. You got the Blade Blesser, again, neither an artifact nor an enchantment, but it's going to be Death Touch as long as you control an artifact, and Menace as long as you control an enchantment. That's just a decent creature, and it is a samurai, so you're going to get samurai synergies off of it. The Runaway Trash Bot is going to get buffed by both artifacts and enchantments, and since you're kind of probably trying to build your deck with an even amount of either one, maybe this is the best deck for it. I don't think it's a great card. I do like Circuit Mender. You're going to have vehicles, you're going to have equipment in this deck, right? Oh, actually, let's go back one. The Shrine Steward is interesting in this deck because it's an artifact that draws you an aura or a shrine, both of which are enchantments. So this is even though it's 5 mana for a 3/2, it is a 1 single card. Make sure you've got artifact and enchantment. So that's another one where maybe this is the best deck for that.
Yeah.
The good thing about black is, I mean, you can get pretty good value, right? Like, you've got this Dockside Chef, which is a 1 mana 1/2 that lets you eat artifacts or creatures to draw cards, and it's an enchantment creature. You've got the Spirited Companion, which is just enchantment that's going to draw you a card. Have a body that you can sacrifice to the chef at some point. You've got all these sagas. which are enchantments that are going to sit on the battlefield for a couple turns and then turn into creatures. It's black-white. It's going to be grindy, I guess. Maybe that's sort of what the mythic
is. It doesn't
is.
look great.
It doesn't look great to me either.
But then you're like gonna get beat by it, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, holy crap!" Like, it wasn't all that hard to get an artifact enchantment out, and then once that happens, maybe the payoffs are good.
I think one of the signs it's not as good is this signpost is pretty good. It's a 4/4.
They're like
that's gonna every time you attack poop out a 2/2, and when it enters the battlefield.
But it doesn't have evasion though, and it's so weak to removal.
Yeah.
It's in the spot.
And it's legendary, right? So you can't stack them.
Yeah.
But so, you know, if you get it going, I mean, you pop an enormous energy blade on your enchantment creature and go to town.
Yeah.
Here's another one I think is just like a pretty weak archetype in this set. I mean, it still remains to be seen, but we got the Gloom Shrieker here. The official version of this archetype is its recursion, or like graveyard matters. I didn't really find a lot of cards that supported that. Anyways, you get a 2/1 menace that's gonna bring back a permanent from your graveyard to your hand. You can't loop it because if it dies, you have to exile it. But like a 2/1 menace, it's an enchantment creature also. Eternal Witness effect is good. We know that's good. So I think you're just gonna, it's similar to a lot of these green decks, you're just kind of like, we're gonna rely on ramp and value. And then black has some good value, like with the Dockside Chef of drawing cards. You've got the Reckoner's Bargain, where you can sacrifice stuff to draw cards. And then you can use stuff like Season of Renewal and bring back what you sacrificed. Or if you can channel a big creature, like here's a pretty good combo, right? You channel the Greater Tanuki on turn 3. So you got 4 mana. Turn 5, you play your land. Somehow you had 4 lands played in a row, right? And then you channeled one onto the battlefield. So then on turn 5, you can bring back Greater Tanuki from your graveyard. And if you happen to have an artifact on the battlefield, then it's a 7/6 trample.
Okay.
But you know, that's uncommon. There's like Reanimator of small stuff in this set, but like this salvage is basically your big payoff for that.
Okay. Not much to work with then.
You know, and you got Kami of Restless Shadows, right, which can bring back a ninja or rogue to your hand.
Or another one.
Or put a creature on top of your graveyard, like on your graveyard on top of your library, which is not even card advantage, really. It's just card selection. You know, I was really hoping to find like some good cheap mill cards and stuff in this that would like stack your graveyard at least to do graveyard stuff, but I really don't think its graveyard matters very much. Like there's a lot of things that make your opponent sacrifice creatures.
Yeah, this deck has to be built around like channeling stuff into the graveyard. I would just imagine.
I mean, yeah, or just grindy, right? Just like trade off with the Death Toucher, and I don't know.
Yeah.
You've got this 2/3 menace. When it attacks, return a creature card with mana value X, where X is the number of modified creatures you control. So you kind of have to like have a modified package to make that work.
We'll see. It's not a color pair that I like to play, but it has removal, it has big creatures, and like can play just on that stuff alone usually.
Yeah, good point.
It's always a color pair you get pushed into, like, you know, people want to push you that way.
Here's one that you will like. Black-Red Artifact Aristocrats. This one looks like a ton of fun. I love the signpost here. It's an artifact that gives you 1/1s, 1/1 artifact tokens, no less. When one or more artifacts you control leave the battlefield during your turn, and you can make that happen by sacrificing an artifact, and you do the little Cauldron Familiar thing where you drain your opponent for 1. So I'm thinking you build this with lots of like cheap artifacts. Like you got the Virus Beetle that's going to come in, drain people. Get the Rabbit Battery. You got the Dockside Chef, which is another sacrifice outlet. We got the Experimental Synthesizer, which can just come in and then be an artifact that hangs out to be sacrificed. The Terrarium, the Circuit Mender, which is actually going to let you draw a card when it leaves the battlefield. You've got the Trash Bot, which is going to pay you off for having a ton of artifacts in your graveyard. I know you want to know about Steal and Sack. The one, like, Act of Treason threaten effect in this set, at least at common and uncommon, is the Shattered States era, which is 5 mana. Yeah. And you would actually rather have it on step 2 of the saga, right? So you have your mana up when it activates.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's the first turn where you gain control of target creature. Now, there's tons of artifact creatures. So if you've got your Signpost and you get this, you're probably going to be able to steal your opponent's artifact creature and sacrifice it and get your payoff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not a great card to have in your deck if you don't get the right stuff to line up. I did throw in this rare here, Scrap Welder. Looks like it's going to be really at home here in this deck. It's a 3/3 for 3. And it has the ability to tap, sacrifice an artifact with mana value X, and then you get to return an artifact with lesser mana value. So you kind of go down the chain with it. But again, just a sacrifice outlet for artifacts.
I guess you sacrifice your artifacts as they're getting killed.
Yeah.
But you then don't want to attack with it. It's like a kind of a board stall sitch. It has okay stats.
Yeah, well, it's a 3/3 for 3, right? You may be able to get in once or twice with it, and then you can sit back and you can get your ping value, right? You're just going to grind people out with the like little sacrifice value, right? You've got like Searchlight Companion, which is going to leave behind a 1/1 creature. You've got the Papercraft Decoy. When it leaves the battlefield, you can pay 2 to draw a card. You've got the Iron Apprentice, which you can sacrifice and move its counters to something else.
Gotcha.
Right, so you can go 3, 2, 1, and you could get value all the way down the chain.
You need to get more value to trade off creatures like that. It seems like that's weak to build up to. It's not what you feel like to build up to a board where you're just like sacking off bigger creatures for smaller creatures. And getting like ET abilities, like getting another 1/1 colorless, but you're like not.
Well, the thing comes back; it's not going away. I do think you hold it up, right, for your opponent's removal, right, and then they can't remove any of your artifacts without you being able to sacrifice it and still get some value out of it.
Pull something else back, but it's still
right. And there's tons of this stuff that's ETB, like the Searchlight Companion. No, I'm not saying it's a good rare. I'm just saying it's the best in this deck.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, well, what are you building up to? That
it's like a build around B or
how do you
something.
win the game that way?
What do you mean?
I don't know if you can win a game just by trying to extract value off of this. Doesn't feel strong at all.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be that strong. It just looks fun. You've got the Yamazaki sister here that can bring back artifacts from your graveyard, right? So you're sacrificing them, you're bringing them back. You're building up your Dragon Spark reactor so that you can do a big shot to the face.
Feels like a lot of things have to happen for this deck to win. That's what I don't know. I'll see. I'll find out tomorrow.
Well, if nobody wants the pieces of the deck, right? If that Signpost Uncommon is going around, I mean, imagine stacking a couple of those.
I think if you got a Scrap Welder, pick one, pack one, you could go in and try and build.
It's going to be like, remember Flesh Taker in that Midnight Hunt? Where you just, if you get a couple of those, guys on the battlefield, it just became really hard for anybody to deal with it.
Because you can sack off other things. And...
Yeah, because immediately sack off things, and I don't know. Not necessarily the best, but it looks fun. And it could be that the pieces are there a lot.
I think it, like in a draft setting, like either you can get this deck and hone in on it, because people aren't gonna like try and lean down to it, and
it's definitely an
wide
advanced.
open.
Yeah, you got to do some advanced deck building and really think about it. But you can put this kind of minor synergies in your other decks too. That's the thing.
But like it doesn't even feel on the level of the green red modified, and then the even blue white artifacts.
Well, just think about like your aggro decks, right? Like how many times you get stuck where the opponent's at like 4, 3, even 2 or 1 life, and they stabilize, and you just need that little bit of extra reach.
Okay, so how are you getting that with this deck?
Well, Dragon Spark Reactor, you got Voltage Surge, because that always hits creatures and planeswalkers, but the Signpost Uncommon is the main way. But you can just get value, right? I mean, you can get back your little 1/1 flyer, and maybe they don't have a flying blocker, and you get in.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it has some cards to play with.
The Twin Shot Sniper comes in and deals 2 damage.
When you're drafting a limited deck, you're like, well, where is it that I finish them at? And then, like, the overall theme of this deck is that there's nothing to me that seems like you're getting some major advantage on your opponent as the game goes along with these cards and the mechanic of sacking off artifacts.
Fair enough. Blue-green. Well, there's a lot of channel in blue and green, but it seems like really they just want you to ramp. I do like this. Well, first of all, people are going to get Tamiyo and try to build this deck because they got Tamiyo in their pick 1 pack 1.
Yeah, that card, that's a planeswalker that has 5.
But I do like this Colossal Sky Turtle. It's another similar thing of like, okay, 6/5 flying ward 2, but it's 7 mana. How often are you going to get that limited? But it's got 2 channel abilities. Yeah, it's a bounce spell. I think, yeah, I don't know what it is. 80-90% of the time you're going to use it as a bounce spell, and then
you draw it late game,
you get it late game. You just stack a bunch of these in your deck, and
that's a good sign.
You can buy back.
It's 6/5 flying ward 2, dude. That's good.
Yeah, this is going to be a game ender if your opponent gets it down.
Just sort of bounce spell attached to it.
Yeah. Although, I mean, by the time you're spending 7 mana, although you do have a ton of ramp in green, by the time you're spending 7 mana, how good is ward 2? I guess is a question.
Well, usually they can pay it because they're at a lot of mana too, right? So.
But yeah, I mean, I just pulled stuff that ramps here, basically, in her channel. We already know that Greater Tanuki looks pretty good. That's kind of like the common version of that flyer. Gives you the channel value and then can be a big body in the late game. Bamboo Grove Archer is interesting here on the right. It's kind of the opposite. It's like a 3/3 defender reach for 2. And then in the late game, it can destroy a creature with flying, which is good because there's a ton of these mythic dragons that are going to be running around because anybody who drafts them is going to try to play them. So I like having the green kill a flying creature spell on something that's also a body in case you don't need to kill a flying creature.
Yeah, I mean, stats are good on
that. There are a decent amount of green cards that bring stuff back from the graveyard, right? So you can channel your thing into the graveyard and then buy it back at a later point, or you can containment construct. So when you discard a card, you can exile it instead and then play it. You can try to ramp big, channel your Jukai Preserver to put 2+1/+1 counters down, and then because you got 7 mana, play the Jukai Preserver. that same turn.
Oh, maybe.
More likely you're going to combo it with. Well, we'll talk more about this Containment Construct is a really fascinating card. I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a sec. And then not really an official archetype, but people just always want to know, can you play 5-color good stuff? And we'll talk about the mana bases and fixing closer to the end of this, but yeah, you can play it. There's this Kami War mythic enchantment that's you're gonna need Wooburg to cast. Wooburg +1 actually, and there's 2 3-color legends. Should you play 5-color? I don't think you probably should if you're trying to win, but there is some support for it, and in various
Treasure
colors.
is nice.
Which one?
Right. You have how much treasure stuff do you have in that black?
Well, you have the black treasure maker, but the creature has to die to make the treasure.
Isn't there another one that gave you a treasure win?
Yeah, there's this ninja, the blue ninja here.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, you're probably really going to want to be in green, right? You got the Tanuki at common that can go grab any basic land. You got this Grafted Growth, which gives you 2 mana of any one color. Unfortunately, not 2 mana of different colors. And there's just a colorless artifact here. Network Terminal. Tap, add 1 minute of any color. I mean, 3 mana rocks are not the best, but that's what it is. You've also got the Terrarium, which is a 2 mana draw whatever land you want. So you can definitely do some serious multicolor if that is your jam.
My shoulder. It's hard to even this.
Oh, I'm back. We're back. Brother moved a lot of furniture. He's complaining about his shoulder. What are you thinking so far of just seeing all those main archetypes?
I like the modified one probably the most so far.
Oh, really? It's super supported. It's definitely like they want you to do the modified thing.
Come out, punch you in the face, like.
I thought you'd be into the samurais, but ninjas also look like a lot of fun. I think especially the early weeks, everybody's going to try to draft ninjas.
Yeah, there'll be some stuff open. I'll probably should be able to figure that out. I'll play what's comes to me early on. Try not to be super selective, but I will be trying to get towards the aggro builds.
Well, it's interesting. You felt like green-red was your jam. I didn't select any green when I was trying to figure out, like, it looks like the aggro colors to me are in Mardu. Like, you got some good cheap value creatures that can smash really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then equipment that you can pop on them to keep making them threats.
Right.
And then the question is, like, is this a format that's going to have a control deck? I think it is. And I think, while you could build like a white-blue control deck, I actually think there will be some blue-green control decks. I think the Sky Turtle and the channel value and all this stuff in green, and stuff like the the Bamboo Grove Archer, which a lot of people aren't going to want, but it's just a 3/3 defender with reach that's just going to brick wall for the early game, and then you just sit back, counter everything, draw lots of cards, and like you can even win with these really slow sagas that I think a lot of people aren't going to want too.
Yeah, blue green will be good. I can. That's almost guarantee.
Blue green is very unfocused to me. I don't know how often people are going to end up in blue green. I mean, it does just have the Simic thing of like ramp, play big creatures.
Got all those cards. Those are
draw cards. You know, it's definitely got that, and I know a lot of people like to play that. And you can do that with a little bit of control bent to it. In terms of counter spells, this Disruption Protocol it's a cancel, but sometimes it'll be a counter spell if you've just got an artifact sitting around. Maybe your mnemonic sphere. Essence Capture is really interesting, right? Because it can modify as it puts a +1/+1 counter down. So you can get your modify synergies off of it, which is another good reason to go blue-green, I think. You pick up a couple Essence Captures. There's this weird card, Discover the Impossible, which lets you dig for an instant with mana value 2 or less. And you can play it. And conveniently, these 2 counter spells are mana value 2. So you can actually, if you have enough density of counter spells in your deck, you can actually treat Discover the Impossible as a counter spell in your hand.
Better than actually having drawn the counter spell and having it in your hand.
Like if you're desperate to counter something, you can dig for the Disruption Protocol and counter using Discover the Impossible.
Well, wouldn't you just rather have that counter spell
at instant speed? Well, but it's got the dig thing, right? So if you don't, you put the card into your hand.
I guess you have chance of.
So
yeah, but you wouldn't want to burn it almost like that, would you?
Well, if you're control deck, right, and you need that counter spell, you dig 5 and you can maybe find it. And if not, you're gonna pick the best of the 5 cards and put it in your hand.
That's mana value 2 or less.
No, that's only
okay.
it only casts
it.
It casts it.
Two or less.
It casts it instantly if it's mana value 2 or less.
Yeah, okay, that's better. I was reading it wrong.
I mean, it's a 3 mana to draw 1 card. It's bad otherwise, but I think this is what you're supposed to use it for, right?
It's not. It can't be great.
Stack your deck with a bunch of 2 mana instants.
You don't want to do that though.
The other thing is,
you don't want to do that.
The problem with Disruption Protocol, right, is there's so much channel running around, and Disruption Protocol does not hit channel. Because channel is an ability, it's not casting the spell. Mirror Shell Crab, however, will counter a spell or ability unless its controller pays 3.
Nice. So
again, that's something to pay attention to. Is that channel is a spell, or channel is not a spell, it's an ability. So pay attention to that with the counter spells. Not really relevant for Essence Capture. I mean, it's limited. You're going to always have something to hit with Essence Capture. People always want to know, is there a mill deck in the format? I'm happy to report I think you can build a mill deck. You got your 2 millers, which are Goshintai of Lost Wisdom, which is going to, you're probably going to want to try to stack it with more shrines so that you will be able to mill. There's also a rare that lets you have multiple legendary of the same name. So you can have multiple shrines if you get that out. But your main thing is you probably want to get a couple of these Raito Sentinels, which are 3/3 defenders for 3. When they enter, they mill somebody for 3. And then you're just going to blink those with like Planar Incision. You're going to bring them back from your graveyard with the Colossal Sky Turtle. You're going to return them to your hand with Light the Way and then replay them. Blink them with Touch the Spirit Realm's channel ability. You tack in with them and make them come back with Return to Action. Or bring them back from your graveyard with Kami of Restless Shadows or Okiba Salvage. Or bounce them back to your hand with Moonsnare Specialist so you can cast them again. Bring them back Season of Renewal. And even Kami of Industry can be used to get multiple triggers off the Sentinel. It's a bit of a Rube Goldberg, but I think you can build a mill deck if you are so inclined. Yeah, I mean you can mill. It says target player mills 3 cards, right? So I guess in that green-black deck,
I don't think you can mill your opponent with these cards. You can't win. You can't mill your opponent out with this. You can only mill yourself and try and.
Oh, you're gonna get milled by this.
No, you're not.
Somebody's gonna build it.
No, nobody's gonna mill you with this.
It's not gonna be like Merfolk Secret Keeper, but it's you're gonna. Nobody's gonna want these Raito Sentinels. right? You're going
Well,
to be able to pick up
they're uncommon.
every once in a while. You're going to be able to pick up 3 of those, and
Yeah,
then
or maybe you
get a
have 3
bunch
of
of
those, so you're milling 9 cards, and then
planar
maybe
incisions.
get the shrine out early, and the shrine mills 10
What?
cards in the
Right.
game.
Well, you're
So maybe your best case scenario is that you mill 15 to 20 cards
well.
off of your
Remember the
opponent's deck.
shrines stack, right? So if you get the blue shrine, the green shrine, and the white shrine, you can now you're milling for 3 every turn for 1 mana.
But the downside to mill is that you're like then wasting your like playing cards that aren't like giving you a chance to win the game any other way. You know, I just don't think it's there. I'll
No,
be
it's not
I'd love
good.
to report to you when somebody mills me, but I don't
It's
think so.
not good, but these are fun decks you can build. I mean, you can build Shrine Tribal, right? There's the mirror box I was talking about. Legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. So you can just go nuts and
Okay,
have
so there's more
multiple
shrines
copies
there
of the
than
same shrine, right? In the shrine deck, if you're building your rainbow shrine deck, or you can build
shrines.
four 3-color, even 2-color shrine deck, maybe even if you can reliably get your mirror box, and you do have that blue spell that can grab artifacts and search them up.
The mill, yeah,
You're gonna make the shrines
and maybe
cost
you mill
less with the
somebody in the shrine
naturalist.
deck.
You're gonna get value out of the shrines hanging out from like the samurai. You can bounce
Yeah,
and
I think the Geothrow Kami is kind of cool card.
you can bounce the shrines, gain life. You're gonna grow your visitor as you play the shrines. Your shrine steward lets you search up your shrines, so whatever shrine you're missing, and then you just
Somebody's gonna try and play shrines for sure.
who's gonna play shrines?
People are.
So you're down on the mill deck, but you think the shrine deck.
It's probably better than the mill deck. I did the mill. Well, I think the shrine deck's probably more likely to mill you with the blue shrine than the gargoyles are to come in and assist.
I mean, that's true.
Whatever you're
That's
theorizing
possible.
is a mill deck.
The black shrine is a house. If you can get multiple shrines going,
The toughest excellence. Yeah, I mean that's good. I mean,
you start blowing up your opponent's board with your shrines. But there's a lot of enchantment support, right? So you just be getting lots of other value while this goes on.
yeah.
And it's
The
similar with
thing is
sagas,
that
right?
the shrines are going to be like not valued, and there might be just a draft where you get
Yeah,
the
I don't.
shrine
The
gold or
shrines are going to be low value in the draft, and you might be able to pick up a bunch. It's kind of like they had shrines in, was it M21? Like
I guess, yeah.
you could throw a couple shrines in your deck and hope some games you're going to get your 2 shrines out at the same time, and you're going to start getting a bunch of value. Really usually only takes 2 shrines. We'll see how you do have to pay mana for these shrines, which I'm not super high on, but they're also creatures, right? So they can be attacking and blocking, and if you got multiple copies of it, right, you sacrifice one and play the next one. But it's a similar thing. You're gonna get the enchantments value with the Saga's Tribal. You do have this rare here that kind of wants you to either bounce sagas when it dies or return a saga from your graveyard to your hand, which I think is what you're mostly going to do, and it can accelerate you through the sagas by tapping. And there's also this uncommon Story Weave, which will let you put 2 lore counters on target saga you control. Although, again, 3 mana just to accelerate your saga, and the creature comes in with 2+1/+1 counters. If you can use it as a combat trick, I think it's all right. But it's going to be fun. There's going to be some interesting play patterns. Another one I know you like, Voltron. I mean, people are going to try to do it with this Hidetsugu Consumes All, which on the reverse side is a 3/3 trample. Whenever it deals damage, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And if it deals 10 or more damage to a player in one turn, they lose the game. Like, they've probably lost by that point anyway, by the time it's a 10-10. But anyways, it's it's a card that is going for a high price right now, so I think people are going to play it. So what do you do with this deck? You get out creatures that you can put auras and equipment and counters on to make big and then protect them. Light Pause is a good one to have because it's a 2/2 that also will grab an aura when you cast it, or whenever you cast an aura, it's going to grab another aura essentially, and it has to attach to Light Pause. So there you go. Selfless Samurai, you can sacrifice to make a creature indestructible, so protect your Voltron. Tameo Safekeeping, you give a creature hexproof and indestructible, protect your Voltron. Armguard Familiar is equipment that's going to give Ward 2 to your Voltron, which is somewhat protective. Walking Skyscraper is another one you could try to build up on because it's hexproof as long as it's untapped. You could try and... I was looking for ways to give it vigilance. It doesn't seem like there's an easy way to give it vigilance. But anyway, it is hexproof as long as it's untapped. And Patchwork Automaton is a 1/1 with Ward 2, so it's another one where you can feel a little bit more comfortable stacking a lot of things on it because it's going to be harder for your opponent to remove. Portrait of Michiko is going to be a good thing that's just going to grow the more artifacts and enchantments you get out anyway. Enormous Energy Blade. What do you think of this equipment? 3 mana. Gives the equipped creature +4/+0.
Taps the creature.
But it taps the creature when you equip it.
I mean, it's okay.
So theoretically, like you play this. Maybe you play it when you have 5 mana, right? You attack with your creature. Then after combat, you put it on there because it's tapped anyway. And then the next turn, the creature is going to be huge, right? Good with lifelink and first strike, double strike.
Yeah, it just is slow. It makes it feels like it's going to take a long time for it to hit. Like whereas with equipment, you just want to put it on a creature and go.
Yeah. Return to action. If you're not doing it's not really good with enchantments or equipment, or +1/+1 counters. So I don't know, but if you want to get a big creature and then be able to bring it back if they kill it. Plus, it can give lifelink, so maybe you just need one big lifelink hit to make that worth it. I don't know. You could do a little Voltron package and other things. There also seems to be, if you want to play vehicles, but you don't want to play blue, there's this Rat Pilot at Rare, which is a 4/3 payoff for returning vehicles from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then they go back to your hand. So just driving vehicles recklessly. I guess the rats don't drive the best, but they're good at repairing stuff. Maybe they're like the Fast and the Furious rats. The Rats and the Furious.
Oh.
The Fast and the Furious.
Fang is the boss.
Grease Fang is the boss of the rat gang.
Looks like it.
The rat biker gang, the Okiba Reckoners.
Flavor.
So you do have one rare, also black vehicle. That's a sacrifice outlet. And it is a crew 2, and it's a 2 mana vehicle, so that's not bad. You got Nizumi Prowler, which has 3 power, and it's only 2 to play. And it's going to also give Death Touch and Lifelink to something when it enters the battlefield. And then you can play that. You can play your Dragonfly Suit. And
that combat trick's pretty good with that guy.
Which combat trick?
The Prowler. Ninjutsu him in, get something else. Target creature.
Yeah.
That's I think.
I mean, they're first strikers in white, right? So you could plan to ninjutsu that in, and before damage is dealt, give something Death Touch.
Yeah.
With first strike.
Yep.
Oh, that's the other thing you can do with ninjutsu. Now I remember, because there's a first strike damage step. So you could ninjutsu after the first strike damage, but before regular damage. So if your first striker is unblocked, you can let it deal damage, then ninjutsu it back to your hand, and your ninja will deal the damage. So it's almost like a double strike with ninjutsu. That's the
what you're gonna,
ninjutsu trick.
that's the main trick.
That's the payoff for everybody who's watched and listened this far.
Hey, you were holding that one out. You forgot
Yeah,
about
I
it.
just remembered it.
The first strike is really good then when ninjutsu
Yeah.
for that
So yeah,
that
so that's
reason
another
alone.
reason to. That's another
So what
thing
if you
black
were
white can
to
do.
then like the first striker could do your 2 damage and you can ninjutsu in like a bigger creature and just finish it off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of people are gonna get got by ninjutsu. Like it's gonna be make them have it. If I block this thing, it's gonna be a lot of
Yeah, I'm just interested in seeing how it all filters out in combat. So
mind games. But yeah, and then there's this saga at common. Like, what other deck are you gonna play this in? Flips into a 2/2 vehicles you control have menace. I mean, I guess if 2/2 menace, but anyways, rat pilots. You get these rares, you can build your rat pilot deck. Okay, this containment construct. So definitely want to get your brain on this because this to me is a really fascinating card. You can play it in any deck. There's tons of discard synergy throughout the set. But I think people will be able, if nobody's drafting this guy, and you can get multiples of them, you can build some kind of crazy discard value deck where you're just playing these things like the Dokuchi Silencer here, this ninja, that when it deals combat damage, you can discard a creature card, and when you do, destroy target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So you can like discard your creature and then just play it.
yeah,
Like a 3-for-1 or something. You got a common saga that has 2 draw and then discard a card things, which is like if you got this guy out, then it's like draw 2. I mean, it's a draw and an impulse. You got all these channel lands. That channel is a discard effect. It's like cycling, so you can channel the land for the effect and then play the land. It says play. It doesn't say it has to be a spell, right? So you can still use it as your land drop and get the value out of it. Also, a common, you got that fish that loots here whenever you play an artifact. The containment construct is itself an artifact. It definitely, I can't put it all together into a deck yet, but it definitely seems to me like there's something there. I mean, it might just be a little synergy package that you put within a deck. So I put a question mark on this, but there's something. I mean, this mnemonic sphere also, like, you can channel it to draw a card, so you could pay 3 mana essentially to draw a card and then also play it. And then later you cash it in for 2 more cards.
mm-hmm.
And that's also a common. And some of these things look like maybe they're going to be undervalued or just maybe properly valued in the draft, but you're going to be able to build a deck out of stuff that nobody else wants. Another fun thing you can do is you can build around Guardians of Oboro and a couple defender creatures and modify them and have them attack. Not a lot to say about this. This is kind of a meme, but
That's not I wouldn't say it's a meme because it's common, so it's not like you can't just stack your deck with like 4 or 5 of those cards if you were going to go all in on it.
Yeah.
More possibility than millions on the deck.
I mean, all you need is this. If you have enough ways to modify, like this Armguard Familiar, right? Problem is the reconfigure is 4. But your curve is, right, you play Armguard Familiar on 2. You play Guardians of Oboro on 3. On turn 4, you equip up the Guardians of Oboro. And you've got a 5/5 Ward 2. Mashing in. Plus you could play with like Essence
but
Capture.
it also costs you two creature cards in a bunch of turns, so it's
Yeah.
not like crazy trends or anything.
Yeah. At least you got Ward there.
It costs you your 4-drop turn to reconfigure.
Colorless removal. There is one. Ninja's Kunai. And it's equipment. We know modifying is good, right? It's one to play, 1 to equip, which is like your jam. And then at some point you can 1 and tap, sacrifice it to deal 3 damage to any target. So there's your artifact deck reach also. Lightning Bolt. I wish it gave the equipped creature +1/+0.
Yeah, it doesn't do anything, and then the creature has to tap to destroy it.
Yeah. But it's gonna modify, if you care about modifying creatures, if you care about artifact synergy. And it's also one of those effects where it's sitting out on the battlefield and now your opponent has to play around it, because as long as that creature is untapped and you have 1 mana, combat gets really messy.
Yeah.
And again, when we're thinking about the toughness of the creatures, right? We saw a ton of creatures that are like 1 and 2 toughness. Some at 3, some at 4. And that, I haven't done the math of like what the distribution is and everything at common and uncommon and all that. I mean, that'll just all shake out probably in the first couple of days of the format.
The creatures seem to like have like a lower stats than normal.
But I think 3 damage is pretty good for a damage dealing thing.
It's not a great card. No, that's not a good card. But I'm just your point is right that the creatures have maybe weaker stats than some sets.
Yes, I think so.
And that's because of the modification and stuff. And so
because of modified and because of the vehicles.
Maybe you want to be able to get 3 damage off earlier on, but that's it's a bunch of card and it's a bunch of effort, and it's tapping creature to deal 3 damage, so it's not good.
Yeah. White has a decent amount of removal in this set. You've got a 1 mana sorcery that's going to destroy a small artifact and you gain 3 life. Not sure if this is going to be main deckable. There are tons of artifacts running around. I guess if the format is fast, what do you say?
Sideboard card, best of 3 card.
I mean, all these like destroy an artifact or enchantment start off in the sideboard, right? When you're looking at these sets, but this particular set, there's so many artifacts and enchantments. My argument is that I think some of them will be main deckable.
If it was artifact or an enchantment, then yeah. No. Sideboard card, because you can't just expect you're running it into the artifact.
I think I'll start it off in the sideboard, but my point is, if this format is really fast, right, and you're racing people, then the 3 mana value 3 or less is not going to matter, and the gain 3 life is going to make a big difference. So that's when you should look out for this card. If that's what this format turns out to be, then bump this card up in your pick order. That's all I'm saying. Banishing Slash. You disagree?
That's the 3 card. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you feel the same about Banishing Slash?
No, that's my point was that card can target artifacts, enchantments, or tap creatures.
Yeah. It's still a sorcery, right? So if they've tapped the creature, they've probably gotten you. That white thing. It is white. I mean, it's 2 mana, but it's white.
I don't know.
And some amount of the time, I think it's really going to depend on how often you're making the 2/2. I don't think you're going to be making the 2/2 super often. But you're main decking this just because it hits the tap creature.
Yeah.
And then the artifact enchantment is like the bonus. Well, I still think the premium removal here in white is this Intercessor's Arrest.
Pretty standard.
It's pretty standard. Right. Can't attack, block, or crew vehicles. Activated abilities can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Problem is, right, if everybody's main decking
for your opponent.
No, because modified only counts auras you control.
Okay.
So good point there, but yes, no. And then an uncommon similar effect, right? Touch the Spirit Realm, which is going to exile artifact or creature until it leaves the battlefield. So it's like the Oblivion Ring style thing. The problem with both of these, right? If people are main decking the enchantment removal, and we'll see some of the enchantment removal in green, these like already have that drawback in limited of being able to be removed.
Yeah.
More easily than other removal. I think you still play them.
Those are always devastating too, because like they use their enchantment removal at instant speed as you're attacking, and their big creature comes back on the board.
Yep.
And then like walks down what you didn't see.
Yep. Something to watch out for. You're going to get also enchantment synergies though in white with these, so maybe it shakes out in the balance. I don't know. We've got this Saga at 3 mana also that's going to exile a creature an opponent controls with mana value 4 or greater for its first chapter. Ignoring especially the second chapter, it flips into a 1/3, which is not good. I think you still play this just because in limited you're probably most of the time going to have a target for it. Plus it's exile, which is going to be good against these dragons. All the dragons, the mythic dragons, have dies triggers in this set. All right, no comment from you on that, but
No.
Repel the Vile. This is okay. Here's another one to get your thoughts on. Now we're up to 4 mana here.
Where this card's like usually 3 mana.
Exile target creature with power 4 or greater.
It exiles.
Or exile target enchantment.
Yeah, it will be fine in the white deck because there's just not enough removal speed.
So you main deck that?
Yeah, I think you can. It's like going to your last card in if you're thin.
If you just need removal?
Yeah.
Or you need...
But the exile part about it is nice.
The exile is really nice. As I said, you get these dragons. There's a lot of things that...
There's
a lot of things that have dies triggers that you're going to want to...
Right. They modify something, they get something all huge.
There's a decent amount
of those enchantments, whatever.
Graveyard recursion. Yeah, instant speed. That's true. With the modified, maybe you're going to have more creatures with power 4 or greater.
Yeah.
And then I threw Moth Rider Patrol on here because it is 4 mana tap target creature, so it is sort of like bad 4 mana removal.
It's you're gonna pick Moth Rider Patrol is like early on.
I know you're high on the Moth Rider.
I bet the card's got to be good. It's a 1/1 flyer that taps creatures out, and then do what it's supposed to do.
Blue, as usual, doesn't have a ton, and its removal is kind of conditional. You've got this Awakened Awareness, which is at least flexible, because you can put it on your own thing to pump it up if you put a lot of mana into it, or you can use it just to turn your opponent's thing into a 1/1. That effect is usually bad, but I don't know, maybe the flexibility of being able to pump up / modify your own thing is something. Maybe in a green-blue deck.
I don't know. I'm having trouble evaluating if that's gonna be good.
It can shut down a big vehicle because you can enchant an artifact.
So you can just basically do it for none.
So they got they're crewing up their 7/7 trample vehicle, or they're about to, right? They just cast it. You pop this on it. Now it's a 1/1 trample.
Well, it's an enchantment, so you can't do it like instant speed.
Right. Well, oh yeah, I guess it was haste. It was a 7/7 trample haste. Well, some other big vehicle they pop down that doesn't have haste in this example.
Sure.
Short circuit. Flash, enchant artifact or creature. As long as enchanted creature permanent is a creature, it gets -3, -0, and loses flying. This is going to help you get those ninjas, or get the ninja enablers out of the sky. I still don't think I'm going to pick it highly starting off.
Yeah.
I think your sweet spot for blue removal here is Tamio's Completion, which is this aura with flash, and it's the like pretty standard tap effect. But you can hit artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers with it.
Yeah, that seems alright.
And if it's an equipment, you unattach it. So I think that's probably, if you're a blue deck, you need some removal. You do get a little interaction with that bounce guy, green blue signpost guy. You can also get some interaction with the Cyber Trespassers, which you can channel to tap creatures and freeze them down for a turn.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe aggressive decks, maybe for ninjas, where it's you get an extra value by freezing down some blockers. And the Moonsnare prototype, which can do the put on the top or bottom of the library thing for 5 mana. Pretty standard. Black. Black is where it's at with removal, as usual. You got Clawing Torment at 1 mana. That's going to give something -1/-1. And then it just drains, pings them down. -1/-1 and can't block. So there is use for it beyond removal. This card has gotten a lot of discussion. You are already dead. Instant, destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn, draw a card.
It's alright.
There aren't a ton of ways to like reach out and deal damage, but with ninjutsu, right, people are going to block because they don't want you to have an unblocked attacker for ninja, so you can kind of take advantage of that. Too. Good with first strike.
Instant speed, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe you've cracked black-white with the like first strike synergies between black and white. Dakuchi Silencer. We talked about this guy. Lets you, if you hit, lets you discard creature cards to destroy. Basically turns all the creature cards in your hand into kill spells. Which is cool, but you do have to hit with them. And it's a 2/1 without evasion. So, Lethal Exploit is a 2-mana instant, -2/-2. And if you got a modified creature, which doesn't seem that hard to do in this set, is going to be an additional -1/-1. So it's, again, going to hit that 3 toughness threshold. Life of Toshiro Umezawa is just a reference to Umezawa's Jite, but you can kill an X1 creature with the first 2 chapters. So you can really wreck opponents, I guess, that have a lot of X1s with it.
Oh.
Similarly, Malicious Malfunction, giving all creatures -2/-2 until end of turn, and then exiling. Generally, that effect hasn't been great in Limited, but
seen that card a bunch.
If the format is fast, if people are playing a lot of these small creatures, trying to overrun the board,
and then we already know that the creatures are a little bit weaker.
I mean, that's going to really wipe samurais, right? So it definitely does have a sideboard value, for sure.
Like, doesn't fit your black deck all that well because you have the same thing problems.
Yeah, depending on how you beat it. Maybe black green deck. Maybe that's where it's at. For the higher toughness green creatures. But there's also the thing, right, where like you play a couple of these sagas, wipe the board, and then your sagas flip into creatures.
Okay, that makes sense too.
It's a play pattern. I don't know if it's a good one. Debt to the Kami. This is like the forced sacrifice thing, but it's with exile. I don't think it's good, but it does have that thing of like if they have one enchantment, it's gonna really get it. And black doesn't always have a lot of ways to deal with enchantments, and there are lots of enchantments running around in the set.
The fact that it has the enchantment piece to it makes it much better than that card typically is.
Yeah.
The exile factor.
Yeah. And exile their worst creature.
Right. Well, but you're likely going to be exiling an enchantment, I think, in that scenario.
You think most of the time you'd cast it with the enchantment thing?
Yeah, and have like one enchantment out that you get rid of or something.
Yeah. Well, certain decks are going to have against the green-white deck, right? It's gonna essentially still read the same text because their worst creature is probably going to be some little dinky enchantment creature, and you're going to spend 3 mana to get rid of it. Like you spend 3 mana to get rid of that dog that already replaced itself into a card as soon as it came into play.
Right.
It seems bad. Gravelighter, similar thing. It's a 2/2 that forces both players to sacrifice. Unless a creature died this turn, then you get to draw a card, which is probably the better way to play it if you can help it. Twisted Embrace. Now we're at 4 mana casting cost, and we're kind of more in the traditional sweet spot of limited. This is your sorcery speed removal, and it's also an aura. So you get to enchant an artifact or creature you control, buff it if it's a creature, and destroy a creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. A little more water. And then Assassin's Ink, similar with the instant speed version, and it's uncommon, destroy a creature or planeswalker. A little bit of a payoff for artifact and enchantment.
Yeah, so the Twisted Embraces, so it's good, but if you get blown out, then it's bad, right? Like
It's really, yeah, you kind of want to be careful when you cast it, right?
They get their instant speed removal.
They Assassin's Ink on what you target with the Twisted Embrace, you're really in trouble. We talked about this Shrine, which is a 2/2 Death Touch, which is already semi-removal. And then they can just sit out and blow up your opponent's X1s all day. And then if you can get other Shrines out, you're blowing up X2s or maybe even X3s. It is 4 mana. And then there's another 4 mana, force each opponent to sacrifice a creature. Just a lot of force sacrifice stuff. Not sure that's good, but put it on there anyway. Red looks pretty strong also. You've got the Voltage Surge, which is your sacrifice an artifact to have it deal 4. Otherwise it deals 2 for 1 mana. Only hits creatures or planeswalkers, but I think you're basically going to run as many of those as you can, whether or not you plan to sacrifice creatures. There are those like 1/1 spirits that get made by various cards that are good sacrifice fodder. Flame Discharge at uncommon. If you control a modified creature as you cast it, it deals X+2. So you could actually cast it for 1 mana as long as you've got a modified creature. And that doesn't get blown out by removal because it's as you cast it.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a shock to a creature planeswalker as long as you got a modified creature, which we've established should be fairly easy to have at least one modified creature in most decks. And then
how many planeswalkers are in this set?
And then it scales. So there's no 3, I think. There's Tezzeret, there's the blue-black ninja, and there's Tamiyo. Is there also a white one? Yeah, there is a white one. The Master, or the Wanderer. Yeah, four planeswalkers. There's no like deal 5 damage red spell. So the Flame Discharge is kind of going to have to be your like kill the big creature spell. So you might not want to blast it off really early.
Yeah.
Kami's Flare, this is like your deal 3 damage. And then if you've got a modified creature, it's going to deal 2 damage to that creature's. If it hits you've got a modified creature, it deals 2 damage to the permanent's controller.
Yeah, sweet.
So it's great. You're going to take as many of those as you get past.
Yeah.
Explosive Entry. Now that you've seen a little more of the set, do you have any more thoughts about sorcery speed, destroy an artifact, put a +1 counter? You still thinking sideboard for these things?
I just wish they did a little more, man. Like I just feel like you don't know. This feels hard to main deck that man. Good. Took out an enchantment as well.
Twin Shot Sniper. We talked about.
Yeah, this card's cool.
This card's great. This card's baller. This is another one I think you'll probably just take as many as you can because the fail case again, 2 mana, deal 2 damage, instant speed to a target is great.
Yeah, but
great limited.
You're also cast, I think.
You kind of got a little board wipe here on Seismic Wave, which is 2 damage to any target and 1 damage to each non-artifact creature target opponent controls.
It's not bad.
So
There's a lot of exponents.
it's only the opponent, right? So that so sometimes you're really going to blow people out with it. I think it's a decent removal spell. And then Dragon Spark Reactor, which just takes forever to charge up, but maybe this set has enough artifacts that it's going to do something. But it's like we're talking 6 mana, right? And multiple turns.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible top deck, right? So it comes in with a counter. And it deals damage to the player and up to 1 target creature, right? So I don't know. When are you happy with this? You spent 6 mana to deal 3 damage to a creature and 3 damage to your opponent? You got to cast 2 artifacts after you play it? I just don't know when you're ever happy with this. There's definitely some weird decks that'll
I bet you
be able to pop it off, but
I bet you it can get big. I bet you it can be your finisher.
in the artifact deck, the blue-red artifact deck, maybe. Yeah, you have to treat it as a finisher, right? Like treat it like a 6-drop or something.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm just gonna wait this thing out with this guy.
Oop, don't skip green.
Hit their big thing, hit them.
I got an instant speed punch spell. It's not a fight, and it's instant speed, which is nice for combat trick also.
Yeah.
We got this ninja that can blow up artifact or enchantment when it hits. Has a similar problem to the black ninja removal, but this one at least has a death touch counter on it, so it's sort of like they're damned if they do, damned if they don't.
Mm-hmm.
They want to block it, they're going to lose their blocker. But you do have to lose the death touch counter to do the blow up thing, so you only get one charge. Although it's a ninja, so right, you can bounce it back at a certain point. There's the sorcery speed, exile target artifact or enchantment. Still thinking sideboard on those?
Like my point being is the flexibility.
The flexibility is
Going into a
better
best
for
of
sure.
one, going into a best of one, you have trouble main decking.
I think you're always going to have a
like,
target. The problem is sorcery speed, and the problem is 3 mana. But it is common, right? So you'd be able to get these.
You can play like one,
And
you might play one.
In this set, it's going to it's going to remove a good portion of creatures because there's tons of artifact creatures and enchantment creatures.
It's not enough targets, but it's main deckable.
But you're maybe taking a tempo hit. I don't know. I think it's main deckable. I'm going to go with you on that. I think there's just enough artifacts and enchantments around. Spinning Wheel Kick is one of these weird double X spells. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each of X target creatures and or planeswalkers. So what that breaks down to is if you want to just do Master's Rebuke at sorcery speed, you're paying 4. Once you get up to 6, then you can use this to double kill if you got a big enough creature. You know, and green ramps, so you get up to 8, this could be a game ender, right? You could just have your Tanuki deal 6 damage to 3 of their different creatures and wipe out their whole board.
It's pretty expensive, but I don't even know if it's all that much better than the Rebuke.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think in most cases you'd rather have the Rebuke. But I don't know. You're definitely going to get blown out by it, right?
Yeah, someone's going to double kill you on with it, but it just costs so much. It's most likely just going to be a single kill.
A lot of times you just do the 4 mana thing.
And
you need it.
that the Rebuke was a better card.
Bamboo Grove Archer. We talked about this. It has the channel ability to destroy a creature with flying, which I will maintain will be good because everybody will be playing their mythic dragons. Combat tricks. White, I think the combat tricks in this set in general are very good. I mean, look at white. You got 2 1-mana combat tricks. So it they don't have to do a lot to be really good.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that standard Wonder is an Invention, which is like the standard white, deals 4 damage to attacking or blocking creature. So there you're getting to the toughness threshold of 4, whereas a lot of these we've seen have been like 1, 2, 3. And then we talked about Repel the Vile, which can deal with power 4 or greater. Don't sleep on the channel spells as combat tricks, because those can happen instant speed. So I put on, even though the scenario is not that likely, I put Born to Drive here, because you can channel it, make 2 1/1 colorless pilot creature tokens. And so maybe they could chump block and save themselves with it, or you could even trade and
Crew up.
Block a ninja. Yeah, you can instant crew something.
Right, you're like drop those down. They don't think you can crew your stuff.
Similarly, Touch the Spirit Realm, right? You can exile target artifact or creature, so they go double block, or you go to double block. They exile one of your blockers, and then you've lost creature. Repel the Vile can do a similar thing, right? Instant speed, exile enchantment. So maybe they were getting some modified buff or something with their enchantment, or they had 2 creatures blocking, and you can get rid of one. Does have to be a creature with power 4 or greater. And then this When We Are Young, which suffers from the thing of like up to 2 target creatures, skip +2/+2. And it's got a little payoff for artifact and enchantment. Probably not going to see that one that often. Combat tricks in blue. At 5 mana, you can worry about them bouncing instant speed with the Moonsnare prototype. I think Suit Up is actually going to be more what you worry about. Then they could channel for 2 and bounce something.
You have that -3, -0 that drops out the flyer. That's your big combat trick.
Oh yeah, I missed that one.
It's the one that will wreck a bunch of the different whatever.
Yeah, I usually do a search for flash, and I forgot on this set to so add flash things to all these cards. Takes a long time to put these together, folks, and I've been working and being a dad. I got Brobi here to back me up.
What?
Nezumi Prowler. We talked about how you can drop that in with the ninjutsu and do the death touch lifelink thing as a combat trick. You are already dead, which you like, especially with first strike. Lethal Exploit we talked about, -2/2, or maybe -3/3. I mean, a lot of stuff that's just going to remove. The return to action is an interesting one to watch out for. They make that attack, and you think it's not a good one, but you block, and then they +1/+0 and lifelink. So they've killed your guy, and their guy comes back. Red, red, you often want to be playing artifacts in this set. And things that modify. On the other hand, look, you've got Kindled Fury, 1 red, +1/+0 and first strike. Like, that's your kind of jam as a combat trick, right?
I guess. Maybe, no.
Yeah,
like, usually that's like colorless more and you get +3/+0. Feels like that's
you think
better.
that's too weak?
Yeah, +1/+0. I mean, it's a kill. You can use it like a kill spell. The first strike is good. I mean, you haven't seen that exact card.
There's some death touch, right? So it's good in red-green with the death touching creatures in green, and black with the death touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it works with that one card. Like,
you get the voltage surge, right? Like any of these things that deal damage also work well with first strike, right? So you can pump your guy up with first strike plus deal 2 damage with the voltage surge. Although then you're spending 2 cards to kill their creature. Twin shot sniper we talked about. That can just get channeled to deal 2 damage as a combat trick. Kami's flare is an instant combat trick. Ooh, okay. Iron Hoof Boar. It's a 6 mana card, but you can channel it, give target creature +3/+1, and trample.
Yeah, it's not bad. Channel stuff seems okay. It's stats okay. You don't mind getting it late and just playing a 5/4 haste.
Yeah,
in the back end. Like,
I think you're gonna be happy running that, and the
have,
+1 of the toughness is also really good, right? Because you can use that to save things.
Yeah,
which is not necessarily expected in red.
It's better than Kindled Fury by far.
So. Flame Discharge. And their instant speed, deal damage. Seismic Wave. Seismic Wave is interesting, right? Because you can do some combat where it just seems like creatures are all gonna survive with damage marked on them, and then you hit a couple creatures off.
Yeah, I can hit off the one that needs 2, and then hit the rest. A couple more that need 1.
So I mean,
see it really.
If
some people.
If red's got 2 or 3 mana open, I think you should be scared because there are a lot of things red can do, and this Ambitious Assault is maybe one of the biggest ones where they just pump their whole team for 3 mana.
Yeah, and then you're gonna draw a card,
and probably draw a card because they'll probably have a modified creature. Clearly didn't even out the spacing on this slide, but anyways. Green, you got the combat trick that gives hexproof and indestructible, and also gains life, which probably shouldn't be overlooked in limited. Boon of Boseiju, which is target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among permanents you control, and untap it. I could see you running that in your red-green aggro deck.
Yeah, because it can be pretty big, and green's gonna have some bigger.
I mean, 2 mana +3/+3, plus it's got the untap, so you can ambush something, especially like the ninjas, which I'm guessing everybody's going to be playing. Favor of Jukai is another channel, 2 mana +3/+3, or you get it as a enchantment. You're modified. Jukai Preserver we talked about. +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control. Sometimes a +1/+1 counter is all you need for combat to work out in your favor. So, Master's Rebuke we talked about can be a great little trick to use in combat. Story Weave can instant speed drop 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature. Careful Cultivation can drop a 1/1 jump blocker. And Roaring Earth can put a bunch of +1/+1 counters on a land, which is more of a defensive trick. But anyways, it's similar to red. I think if green's got mana open, you got to be careful.
Green's all combat tricks.
Mana bases. Here's all the channel lands if you want to see them. Pause the video on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitch, sorry. Can't pause it. I'm sure I'm talking slow enough, though. It's been a long week and it's a late night. You got the Secluded Courtyard. If you want to try to build these creature tribal decks, it adds colorless or 1 mana of the creature type for the creature type you chose. I don't know about this. You got the samurais, you got the ninjas. Beyond that, I think it's going to be hard to. I mean, even with that, it's limited. You're not going to all be all samurais or all ninjas. You might be better off with the Uncharted Haven, which is just a tap land where you get to choose the color. Here's an interesting question. In a 2-color deck, do you run Uncharted Haven? You treat it like an Evolving Wilds and you run 1 or 2 just for having more of each color?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you do.
Okay. Got this Roadside Reliquary, which is colorless, so probably don't play it in limited unless your deck really supports it. I do think there will be monocolor decks in this format. If you're in a pod where somebody's sleeping on one color, there's some, especially in mono red maybe, and there's some rares that are hard to make work except in monocolor decks. You might really get a good draft if you can go monocolor. Beyond that, though, fixing is really good, right? Because we have all, 10 of these gain life tap lands. So you'll be able to probably pick some of those up with no problem. Mm-hmm. And then the mech hanger, if you're in the blue-white and want to do pilots and vehicles. There's only like 3 pilots in the whole set, so it's really about the vehicles with that. Fixing, we talked about commune with the spirits, lets you just dig for a land. It's not great. Fixing, Ecologist Terrarium's better because it's 2 mana, draw a land of your choice. And then you get to sacrifice it for some value later. Plus all the artifact synergies. Network Terminal is a 3 mana rock that can also let you loot. Sunblade Samurai has plane cycling, plus you gain some life. Prosperous Thief and Scrounger can make treasure tokens, but it's pretty hard to do. I don't think, if you are in a 3-color deck with one of those colors, maybe you run those just as some addition.
Plays with that 2-drop that you really like.
Yeah.
Think about that really well.
I just think it's just the 3 mana thing. If you've got other synergies with it, maybe it's more valuable. It was definitely good in Innistrad to be able to eat your opponent's graveyard a little bit with your mana rock.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's enough.
Well, in this instance, because the 2-drop comes in before it, and that it taps the 2-drop to discard, you have control over what you're discarding, and then you can recast at the same turn.
So then it's like a 1 mana tax to draw a card with everything you play.
Right, essentially.
Yeah. It's not a, and it's a common too, so it's not going to be terribly hard to set that up if you want to do it. If the format is dirtly enough, that's going to be really good.
It's a late game sort of thing for sure.
More of your jam is this Tanuki. I like this Tanuki the best of all this fixing, right? Because it gets your basic land of your choice. It comes onto the battlefield, so it's ramping you, and then when you don't need lands, it's a big creature. But you could also take turn 3 off with your Grafted Growth and put a +1/+1 counter on a creature or vehicle. Alright, so here's my picks for top commons. You're not going to like that I picked the Ninja's Kunai.
Oh, yeah. Jeez.
But there aren't a ton of, you have a much more limited pool with the colorless commons. But I like this Iron Apprentice. It just works in Modified. It works in the sacrifice of the thing. It's an artifact. So it fits in like tons of archetypes. It does get overpowered. I like the Terrarium. Just the 2 mana, get a land, and then get some value with Modified. As we've seen, Modified is pretty strong, I think. And then the Kunai, maybe going to come around to your opinion on that. But I was just thinking, again, it's Modify plus its removal, plus its artifact synergies. So it's useful in a lot of decks. For white commons, I took the Arrest. That's your common removal. I like this Eiganjo Exemplar. 2 mana, 2/1 that's going to stack. Has enchantment synergies. So it works in the enchantment decks. It works in the samurai decks. And it's just, all else failing, it's just a 2 mana, 2/1. And you do always need 2 drops. And then the Spirited Companion, I think, Generally, this effect is pretty good, especially on a cheap creature, like an Elvish Visionary. Plus, you're going to get enchantment synergies out of it in some of your white decks. For blue, Network Disruptor, the 1/1 flyer that enters and taps. Super all-star in the ninja decks, but then like also an artifact creature for your artifact synergies. Also just an evasive 1-drop. Good to put modifications on or equipment on. I think this is going to be a really hot pick. I like the Moonsnare Specialist. It's that, like, you know, creature with the bounce. Plus it's got the ninja synergies. Plus there's a lot of enter the battlefield things. So some amount of the time you'll just play this on turn 4, bounce your own thing to get more value. And picking another one in blue is hard. I like the Puzzle Maker because it can be a ninja enabler. It's an artifact. It's got tap synergies for vehicles. But I don't know. That one removal spell also common? Maybe it's not. If it is, maybe I should have chosen that instead of three creatures. For black, we got the Twisted Embrace, which is your kind of that, and Lethal Exploit are your like 2 more premium common removals. You got the removes anything, and then you got the removes small stuff, instant speed. And then I just like these things where you can sacrifice an artifact or creature and draw cards. Maybe it's not as good when you don't make a treasure. But it just seemed to me like there's enough stuff that
it's just kind of hold it out till they're trying to kill some players.
Yeah, wants to put stuff in the graveyard, wants to get value.
Right.
I think it'll be decent. But when I was looking through the comments, that's the one that jumped out at me, number 3. Red, I think it's hands down Kami's Flare. I don't think there's going to be any dispute about that. That's going to be your best. That might be the best common of the whole set. And then I like the Simeon Sling. It's got modified synergies. It's got artifact synergies. Kind of doing, got some aggro. It's got just pushing those last points of damage. I feel like it kind of was doing everything all the red decks want to do. And then Voltage Surge, another just instant speed deal damage. Plus you'll be able to sacrifice an artifact to have it deal 4. That'll get you up over that 3 toughness threshold, and so and there's enough artifacts that kind of want to be sacrificed that it won't always be a 2-for-1, especially if you've built your deck a little bit around it. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but Tanuki, been singing its praises the whole time. Like that Tanuki. Good in the early to mid game, good in the late game. The Master's Rebuke is like your premium green removal, and then at common. This is all common. And then Careful Cultivation. Why did I choose this? It works with modified, and it works with the green ramp. I think most of the time you're just going to channel and make your mana dork on turn 2. And that's just going to set up the rest of your deck. And if not, giving something +1/+3 reach and can tap to add double green is like if you're pretty sure your opponent's out of removal at that point, that's pretty good. Plus, I think reach will be better in this set, right? You need to be able to block those ninjas. And final card. Leave comments, people, if you have you've played the set now, probably by the time you see this. Leave comments on what we got wrong on the commons so people can look and see. Or maybe what we got right. Definitely had predicted some of the ones people hadn't predicted on previous videos. Also predicted some ones that were bad. So always willing to learn. There's some rares like this quad white brilliant restoration. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from your graveyard to battlefield. This is not for limited. March of Burgeoning Life is not for limited or constructed. It's just bad. You have to find a creature with mana value less than X and find a creature that has the same name. It's, yeah.
What? Mm.
So you have like a 3-drop on the battlefield. You put 4 mana.
I don't really want to go into these cards, but it's too late.
You have to put 4 mana into this. Means you have 5 mana really. And you can exile stuff from your hand, which is generally good. But this is the thing, and then it comes in the battlefield tapped. That's
That's not good.
Not good. Dragon Kami Reborn is just really slow, as a lot of these sagas are, but some of the rare sagas are at least good. But that one to me just seemed like, in limited, getting it to pay off is not going to happen. The reality chip is a cool jellyfish equipment, but I think it's again just a little too dirty and too slow. And then there's another like quad pip invoke calamity, and if you read it, like you're gonna try to set up your graveyard with instants and sorceries so you can cast it. It's not for limited. Okay, this might be controversial and this might be totally wrong, but the Thundersteel Colossus jumped out at me as something like a lot of people are going to say, "Ooh, a 7/7 trample haste," and not really take into account that you got to pay 7 mana and have something around to crew it.
What do you think Deck Takami is a trap card?
Well, you were higher on that one than I was.
Right, and you kind of like that Discover the Impossible, which I was like, oh, that's a terrible card. But you put it in there.
Well, no, I put it in because I thought there was that weird use and control where you can go and grab your counter spells with it.
That's Takami is not a plant. It's like a playable.
It's playable, but I just think like a lot of the time, by the time you play this,
a lot of times they're gonna
have creatures or enchantments that have become irrelevant. Either you're killing something smaller than 3 mana, right? You're playing it on turn 3 and you're killing their 3-drop at the best case scenario, but you're probably killing a 2 or a 1-drop. Or you're playing it later in the game and you're still killing a 2 or a 1-drop with it.
That's his worst scenario. In its best scenario, it like takes out it exiles a big enchantment, or it exiles like a good creature, like, and keeps your board clear.
Well, this will be one to revisit, and we'll see which of us is right about that card.
Well, I think people are gonna play it. I think it plays. It sucks.
There is definitely something in black of like you just stack a ton of these and you just make your opponent constantly be sacrificing.
Black's done that before, but it also has enough like removal in black that it's kind of, so we might be killing off more creatures, and that might just be a nice finisher. And I think, some of the decks are going to be modifying, building up bigger creatures, so there might be fewer creatures. Who knows?
So you were excited about modified of all the archetypes once we went through the archetypes.
Looks good.
You still feel that way?
Ninjutsu looked good.
After you've seen the combat tricks and the
deck, maybe
the removal, do you think the
think
vehicle deck will be legit?
I think it'll be fun. I don't think it's probably gonna be one of the top builds, but it's gonna settle somewhere in the middle.
I think it will be fun, and I think it is well supported. So the thing with that is, like, if you're in black, right, you just blow up all their guys that can crew.
Yeah, but the Signpost Uncommon makes crewers, and it has all these cards that create these crew dudes.
Right. So
Yeah,
maybe if you're building that deck, you build with like 60% crewers to vehicles, right? You don't do an even split of creatures to vehicles.
that will be something to figure out. How many
But then you got a bunch of
vehicles is too many
underpowered
vehicles.
creatures. If you don't get a vehicle right, then you have a bunch of underpowered creatures.
What's the worst feeling, like losing with your equipment sitting on the board, not being able to crew it, like they beat you in the face? But
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's going to be the same with the equipment, right?
and that -2/-2 might be actually pretty good against that deck in particular with all the crew guys.
Yeah, all just the things that take out the one toughness stuff.
Right.
But
Sweet.
yeah, it's
I'm on a
the team on this one has done well in the past. I'm hoping that they balanced it and made a really fun format because
they keep getting better. They're doing a good job.
I do think. Well, I thought Crimson Vow was a step down in terms of limited.
Yeah,
It had cool designs and stuff, but
I thought it was fun to play.
the bomb heaviness of it was kind of
Yeah, and that's
unbalanced. I thought. I don't know. Some people like that, right? If you're not a great limited player, it's nice to just open a bomb
I
and
lost. There's like I lost 5 or 6 games to that whatever 6/6 demon guy is. It's so.
I had a friend told me he played 3 Hullbreaker horrors in a row. 3 different players all play Hullbreaker horror on him.
Yeah, that guy.
But I guess that's from the double feature because that was from the Midnight Hunt, right? But anyways, he said he beat 2 of them, and I was like, "How'd you even do that?" And he's like, "I held back my instant speed removal, and they didn't have something to bounce." Like, well, that's lucky.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Sweet.
thanks for joining us here in the attic. I have been Manadad. This is Brobi One Kenobi. Leave comments on what archetype you're gonna force here, or if you're coming back and revisiting this after having played a little bit, what your thoughts are on the format, because people do check in with these videos for seems like for years. You know, they bone up for a flashback draft or somebody's cracking a box or something, so it's good to come back and remember what the set is all about and what is good to do in it. Any final words, Brobi, before I stop the recording?
Huh? Thanks for listening. It looks like fun. Hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully I enjoy it. Hope no, I will.
All right. Well, with that, I will say, remember, Magic is a game so fun, even dads, me and Brobi, can enjoy it. Adios.